Sir, could you please state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
William Joseph McCauley. McCauley.
Thank you.
Mr. McCauley, in 1989, where were you residing?
1286 Myrtle Avenue.
Okay, and what area of San Diego is that in?
It's right near Roosevelt Junior High School and near the maintenance entrance to the zoo.
Okay. And do you know where Cypress Avenue is located in that area?
Yeah.
And is there a canyon that you live on?
Right. There's a canyon.
And do you know a residence where Mr. Daniel Broderick, an attorney, lives?
Yeah, I know where it is.
Do you, were you aware of a shooting that took place on Cypress Avenue in the early morning hours of November 5th?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us where your residence is in relationship to his residence?
East, south, and west of his residence.
Okay. And approximately how far in feet or yards would that be?
Probably around 400. I would say 400 feet.
Okay. When you can you see his residence from your residence?
Not without going out of my way.
Okay. Now, can you stand in the balcony outside your bedroom and see his residence?
No, not outside the bedroom. I would have to go all the way to the edge of the deck on the other side of the pool and look down the canyon.
Okay. In the early morning hours of November 5th, do you remember hearing anything?
Yes,
And what did you hear?
I heard 5 gunshots.
Okay. Now, are you familiar with guns?
Yeah,
And what is your familiarity with guns?
I've gone hunting and I learned how to use guns properly, and I've been to a shooting range, and I've heard guns off in the woods while I was hunting.
Okay. And how would you describe the shots that you heard?
They were all in succession,
Okay. And how quick were they?
one after the other.
Can you say how it was?
Bam, 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 bam.
And did you hear a echo associated with the shots at all?
No,
You remember what time it was in the morning?
it's about 5:30 in the morning.
Okay, and you remember what the lighting conditions were?
It was still kind of dark, right before it just began to get light, I think.
Were you awake at the time that the shots were fired?
Yes, I was wide awake.
Okay, and how long had you been awake before the shots were fired?
About a half hour.
Did anyone come to your door at all afterwards, police officers?
No, police came.
Okay. Did you look at a clock when you heard the shots?
Yes,
Okay, and that's how you know it was 5:30?
right.
Have you heard shots in that area before?
Not in that specific area. I'd heard shots over in the park area off in the distance.
Okay.
Nothing right in the neighborhood before.
Okay. And I take it you didn't know there's been transients stay down in that canyon sometimes?
Yeah, I knew that.
Okay, and so you didn't know exactly what the cause of the shots were?
I had no idea.
I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Early. Ms. Wells?
Mr. McCauley, when you heard the shots that morning, did you call the police and report them?
No,
And you indicated that the shots that you heard were are you indicating that it was exactly 5:30 when you heard them? Did you look at the clock and see that it was 5:30, or are you just estimating?
I don't know the exact time. My clock said 5:30, but my clock varied in time,
Okay.
off and on. There was another person living in the house. The electricity got shut off once in a while, and the clocks got changed. And who knows what happened, but I would say it was right around 5:30.
Okay, so you're
I
indicating,
did look at the clock and it said 5:30.
that was my question. You're indicating you don't know for sure whether your clock is accurate, but you did look at the clock and it said 5:30?
Yeah, it's accurate enough to be right in that vicinity.
Do you recall testifying before that you looked at the clock and it said 5:25, 5:26?
Yeah, it could have been 5:25, 5:26.
Well, I guess my question
I
is,
don't recall exactly, it was 2 years ago.
I understand. My question is, do you recall specifically looking at the clock and seeing the time? Or are you just,
Yeah, I looked at the clock. I looked at the clock twice that morning. Once when I woke up, and the next time was right after I heard the shots. I looked at the clock.
okay. And you're indicating it was either 5:30 or 5:25 or 5:26?
Yeah.
Now, you live on, at that time, you lived on a canyon, correct?
Yeah.
Was it a house or an apartment? What did you live in?
I lived downstairs in a big house.
Okay. And is the house right on the edge of the canyon, or is there something between the house and the canyon?
No, I was right on the edge of the canyon.
Did you have a backyard?
Yeah.
And if you go out the backyard, you then would hit canyon at the end of your backyard?
Yeah, at the edge of the deck, it's canyon.
Okay. Now, this is a big canyon, right? I mean, it's a fairly deep canyon and long, wide canyon there.
Yeah, I'd say the canyon is probably 90 foot wide, something like that. 100 foot wide, maybe.
You indicated that you felt the distance from your house to where you believe Mr. Broderick lived was 400 feet. Did you mean 400 feet or did you mean 400 yards?
Well, I think it was further. I think it was more like 400 yards, yeah.
Do you recall testifying before that it was about 400 yards?
Yeah. It is about 400 yards.
Okay, so that, I'm sorry.
I'm very familiar with that neighborhood.
Right, I know, you indicated 400 feet. I thought you might have
Yeah,
just been mistaken.
400 yards is more like it, yeah.
So we're talking 4 football field distances approximately. Okay. And Mr. Broderick's house, as you understood it, was way across the canyon on the other side of the canyon, correct?
Yeah, it's on the other side of the canyon.
Okay, it's not on the same side of the canyon that you're on.
Correct,
It's on the other side of the canyon and down the canyon, around 400 yards.
correct.
Okay. And there was a fair amount of echo in the shots that you heard, correct?
No. There is no echo.
Do you recall giving an interview to an investigator on October 2nd, 1990? Telephone interview?
Yeah.
And isn't it true that you told that interviewer that you didn't know where the shots came from? They came from down the canyon and it really echoed all the way up the canyon?
Well, there wasn't like an echo. It wasn't like a delay. Yeah, I mean, okay. The noise carried up the canyon, yes, but it was not an echo.
Okay. You did tell that investigator that the shots echoed all the way up the canyon.
I don't recall saying that. I might have said that, but that's incorrect because there was no echo.
If I could just show you this interview. It's an interview dated, Your Honor, October 20th, 1990, prepared by investigator Peter Bunn. And referring to page 6, there are no line numbers. If you could just read the yellow portion there. Does that refresh your recollection about whether or not you told him that the shots did echo down the canyon?
I might have used the word echo, but that's not what I meant.
Okay.
It wasn't like yelling into a cave and having your voice come back to you.
Uh-huh.
There wasn't an echo.
And you did indicate, that you were in your bedroom at the time that you heard this, is that correct?
Correct.
You said that you had been awake for some time. Had you been up and about, or were you still in bed?
I was still in bed.
Okay, so you were just kind of lying there.
Right.
And you indicated that it was just beginning to get light, is that correct?
Yeah, I got light shortly after that.
do you recall previously testifying that your recollection was that it was just beginning to get light at the
Yeah.
time?
It was still dark. I couldn't see across the deck. You know, looking out the window, I just couldn't see across the deck, but it got light shortly after that. So it was just, you know, beginning to get light. Right.
I have no further questions.
Redirect.
No, you are.
Witness be excused.
Yes.
I have no further.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCauley.
Your Honor, maybe this would be an appropriate time to have the jury, if they so wish, to at least get critical on the revolver.
Do you want to reopen and have them do that?
Yes.
Offer people's 24 in evidence?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
24 is received. Take the trigger lock off, make sure it's empty. Ladies and gentlemen, you're under no obligation to test the trigger pull if you don't want to. If you desire to squeeze the trigger to check the trigger pull, that's up to you. Pass it up. The gun is empty. We'll take our afternoon recess at this time, ladies and gentlemen. Because of witness scheduling problems, we're not able to get enough witnesses lined up for tomorrow to make it worthwhile to bring you in. We would have less than a half day's worth of testimony, which is not worth bringing you down here. So we'll be in recess on this case tomorrow. We'll resume Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. We will be in session Friday, our regular hours Thursday and Friday, but it would not be effective to bring you down tomorrow for a few witnesses. So please remember the admonition not to discuss the case among yourselves and allow anyone else to discuss it with you, nor form any opinions till it's finally submitted to you. We'll see you Thursday morning, 9 o'clock.
4. Did you test that for AB?
I tested it for ABO, and I got no activity with that particular stain.
Okay. And you did not do any further testing on that, is that correct?
No, I did not.
Okay. Number 3, if it's a hole, if it's labeled number 3 near the top edge of the sheet with a hole in it, that would be the one you're talking about as number 3.
Yes.
And below it, is a stain number 4. That's no activity. That would then be number 4. Is that the one that you
That's
tested?
correct.
Okay. And if you look at the sheet on item number 6, stain, what was labeled, was there a stain labeled number 5?
Yes, there was. There should be 4 different stains on item 6.
Okay. And what did that come out as far as ABO?
Item 6, stain 5 was also no activity detected.
Now, did you test the blanket at all?
We're referring to item 8?
Yes.
Yes, I did. There was 1 stain marked there, and I did test that.
And what was that? How did that come out?
It test indicated ABO type O.
And were you able to, and item number 7 was the top blanket?
The top sheet, item 7, are we referring to?
Yes, the blanket that we see here in front of us.
Yes.
And so there would be a corresponding hole next to a pin with the number 7 on it.
Exactly.
Number 2 on it, I'm sorry.
Correct.
Okay, and item number 8, which is the one fitted sheet, was there something called stain number 1?
Item 8, stain 1, yes.
Okay. And that would appear to be, if there's a pin here with number 1 and a hole cut in it, that would appear to be.
That would be the stain that I analyzed. Yes.
Okay. And that appeared to, did you test that for ABO origin?
Yes, that stain typed as ABO type O.
Was there any other stains that you tested?
There were no other stains.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examine.
Just out of curiosity, Mr. O'Donnell, when you say that you test positive for blood, and then when you test for the typing and there's no activity, you said on a couple of stains, what does that mean?
It means when we conduct a series of reactions typically a blood stain would give you a positive reaction in one of those series of tests. However, in this particular case, a couple of stains did not yield a positive reaction in any of the individual tests conducted. So we indicate that by no activity. I'm not particularly surprised in this case because these sheets have been sitting at room temperature for nearly 2 years. And so over time, you lose a certain amount of ABO activity. So in some instances, we will not get any sort of result from a blood stain.
Okay, so what you're indicating, there's no question that these are blood stains and these are human blood stains.
Yeah, there's no question it's human blood. 5 of the 6 stains are human blood.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Your direct.
Yes, did I ask you as to item number 7, stain number 2, that would be the blanket, hole number 2, what kind of ABO activity that one? What is it?
It's typo.
I have no further questions.
Anything further? Witness be excused.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Long.
Sorry, call. Call Parker Bell.
All right.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter not pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Morning, sir.
Sir, could you please state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
D. Parker Bell, B-E-L-L.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, what is your occupation?
I'm a consultant in criminalistics as well as an attorney in private practice.
And what type of training and experience you've had in the area of criminalistics?
I have a Bachelor's of Science degree in criminalistics from the University of California at Berkeley, which I obtained in 1969. Took a graduate course at UC Berkeley in the examination of dried blood stains in the crime laboratory. I was employed for a short period of time as an assistant criminalist in the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. Later, I was a criminalist for the San Diego Police Department for about 4 years. After that, I was a criminalist in charge of the crime laboratory of the El Cajon Police Department for about 3 years. I've been in private practice for about 14 years. Besides that, took a course at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia in examination of gunshot residue, a course from the Leica company on microscopy, photomicroscopy, and photomicrography. I've toured various firearms and ammunition plants in the United States and Canada. I've been a member of the California Association of Criminalists since 1970. I've attended various meetings of the Association of Firearms and Toolmark Examiners, of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, and of the International Association of Bloodstain Pattern Analysts. Various lectures and seminars over the years to try to keep up with the state of the art in criminalistics.
Now, when you say that you've attended meetings, are those meetings where there are papers given and training done?
Yes, technical papers are presented, workshops are given, things of this nature.
Okay. And during your time that you've worked in the area of criminalistics, have you had the opportunity to examine either crime scenes or to examine crime scene photographs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And can you give me an approximation of how many?
Well, in homicide cases, in about 500 homicides, in various other cases besides that, I've examined scenes and photographs in connection with various issues involving physical evidence in the cases.
Now, what is a forensic criminalist? What do they do?
Well, a criminalist is a person trained in the natural sciences who applies the natural sciences to the examination of physical evidence in criminal cases. So it can be a wide variety of types of evidence, firearms and tool marks, physiological fluids such as blood, semen, saliva, issues involving stain patterns, as we get it with blood sometimes, or fingerprints, glass, paint, hairs, fibers, very wide range of things. Basically, anything that can be touched can be physical evidence.
Okay. And when we talk about forensic, is that the purpose of looking at the evidence and then testifying in court as to the conclusions or things that you see from that?
Yes, sir. That's ultimately the purpose, is to give assistance to the trier of fact.
Okay. Is there a term, crime scene reconstruction?
Yes, sir.
And what does that mean?
Crime scene reconstruction is basically a process of utilizing the physical evidence, examination of the physical evidence, and inferences drawn therefrom in order to test various theories as to prior events. It's basically a process of elimination, of using the physical evidence in order to say, if this happened, then that must have happened. Or putting it another way, it's largely the use of logic, very simple logic. If event A necessarily will result in consequence B, and consequence B is not present, then event A did not occur. For example, if a person is lying under a sheet or a blanket and he's shot in a part of the body that would be covered by the sheet or blanket, there will invariably be a bullet hole in that sheet or blanket. If we don't find a bullet hole in that sheet or blanket, then that person was not covered at the time he was shot. It's basically the use of that type of logic throughout the process of eliminating various possibilities.
And I take it that when you say logic, even though there's some experience that you need, it's not logic. It's not such a mysterious thing that people who do not have training and experience cannot use that logic, is it?
The training and experience, I think, comes in realizing the potential of what the physical evidence can tell. Once we explain what the physical evidence can tell, then I think the logic becomes very obvious to anyone.
Okay. So for instance, the example you gave, that if someone was laying on the bed with a sheet, if there's no hole in the sheet, then you can expect that the person didn't have the sheet over them the time they were shot. I take it that's the kind of logic that anyone can, once you explain, those are the things you would look for, whether there was a hole in the sheet or not. Then anyone can do that, can look and see if there's a hole in the sheet.
Yes, I think so. There may be a question, is this hole consistent with a bullet hole? And that would require some technical knowledge or experience. But the logic itself, I think, is quite simple.
Okay. The logic would be if there's no hole in the sheet at all, it doesn't take a criminalist to say a bullet probably didn't pass through the sheet.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, during did you examine some evidence in the case of People versus Broderick?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And can you tell us what evidence you had the opportunity to examine?
The fitted bed sheet, the top bed sheet, the blanket, and 4 bullets were the items of physical evidence that I examined.
Okay. Showing you what I have marked as defense, I believe is it you?
You, I hope.
Well, I make my V's like that, that's why. Have you seen these photographs before?
You is a series of how many photos?
4 photographs.
Thank you.
Yes, I have.
And Your Honor, I wonder if I could mark on the back of each photograph, so if we refer to them 1 through 4.
Certainly.
Looking at the photographs, the first one up there, I put a number 1 on. Where did those, what is that a photograph of?
This is, number 1 is a photograph of, I believe it's police item number 9, which is the bullet that was recovered off the bed.
Now, when you say that there was a bullet recovered off the bed, there was a bullet that was found underneath the fitted sheet next to a groove or to a line in the mattress pad. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. This is the bullet I'm referring to.
Okay. And did you do an examination of that bullet?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And the photograph that you have here shows the inside of what would have been the hollow point or the hollow part of the bullet. Is that correct?
Yes, it's the photograph is taken at something of an angle, but basically the bullet is sitting on its base, and the photograph is looking down on the nose of the bullet.
Okay. Now, what is photograph number 2?
Photograph number 2 is the bullet, which, according to its package, was indicated as being the one found on the banister or the hallway area outside the bedroom, presumably the bullet that passed through the wall.
And what is photograph number 3?
Photograph number 3 is the bullet which was identified as being the one found under the body of Dan Broderick.
And what's photograph number 4?
Photograph number 4 is the bullet which was identified as having been removed from the nightstand.
Okay. Now, did you also have an opportunity to examine the blanket that is in front of us here, the top sheet and the fitted sheet?
Yes, sir.
And did you also have an opportunity to examine, was there a mattress pad or a mattress cover underneath the fitted sheet that was also fitted?
Yes, sir. If I didn't mention that before, I also had an opportunity to examine that.
And did you also have other information, for instance, autopsy reports?
Yes, sir.
And did you also have information from Mr. Wahlberg as far as some reports, photographs he took?
Yes, sir.
And did you also have photographs of that were crime scene photographs that were taken at the time?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I did.
Now, at the time, did you also have a report that was written by Mr. Doherty?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you have, now did you read those reports and examine all the evidence?
Yeah, all of the evidence I've mentioned, yes.
Okay. And did you do anything with the evidence that you received to help you make some determinations or examine the evidence?
Yes, sir.
And what did you do? First, maybe we can go through the bullets. What did you do with the bullets?
With each of the bullets, I examined them under a stereoscopic microscope, basically just to see what the bullets could tell me. With regard to the bullet out of the nightstand, there is wood embedded in the nose of the bullet.
And I take it knowing that's the kind of logic we talk about, that if you know that a bullet entered the nightstand and you have that bullet with wood in it, similar wood that tells you that that it's likely to be the bullet in the nightstand.
Yes.
Okay. Did you find anything else about that bullet?
I swabbed the outside of the bullet with a cotton swab and tested it for blood and got a negative result.
Okay. Did you, anything else with that bullet?
I did attempt to remove the wood to see if there was anything in the nose of the bullet other than the wood. I determined that I could not remove the wood without causing substantial damage to the item of evidence, and so I didn't go further with that.
Okay. What was the next bullet that you examined?
I'm not sure which order
Okay, if you could go to number 2 and tell us what that is then.
Pardon me, the first one I showed was number 4.
Well, then we'll go backwards now. We'll go to number 3.
Number 3 is the bullet which was under Dan Broderick's body.
Okay. Did you do an examination on that?
Yes, I did.
And what did you do with that bullet?
Well, first of all, this bullet had previously been examined by Mr. Doherty, and some of the material apparently had been removed from the nose and put into a small gelatin capsule. There is still other material still caught in the nose, which are textile fibers. On the end of the post in the center of the hollow point, there's a fabric impression, that the fabric is actually impressed onto the lead there. Besides the materials that have been removed previously, there's still textile fibers that are still caught in the hollow point, between the hollow point and the post. I removed some of these. Some of them are white, some are blue fibers. The blue fibers are a synthetic material. Some of the white fibers are cotton, some are synthetic material.
Okay. Now, did you examine the blanket and the sheets here, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And was there a hole in the blanket?
Yes, sir.
And how many holes were in the blanket?
Just one that was consistent with a bullet hole.
Okay. And that, the blue fibers that you found in the bullet nose, was that consistent with the hole? Was that consistent with the fibers on this material?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the other material, did you find a bullet hole that was in the what I'll call the top sheet?
Yes, there were 2 holes that appeared to be bullet holes.
Okay. Now the holes in the top sheet, did they appear to be close in proximity?
Yes, sir.
And did they appear to be related holes?
One would infer that by their close proximity.
And what do you mean related holes?
My inference from viewing them was that the sheet would have been folded over so that the bullet enters and passes through 2 layers of the material, eventually basically ending up on the same side of the sheet that it started from.
Okay. And those 2 holes were in very close proximity to each other, is that correct?
About 1.5 inches apart.
Okay. And the material that you found in the nose, again, consistent with that sheet?
Yes, basically a cotton and synthetic blend.
Did you review Mr. Doherty's report?
Yes, I did.
And was Mr. Doherty's report consistent with your findings on what kind of material was in the bullet that was found below Mr. Broderick?
Yes, sir.
Was there anything else you did with that bullet?
Yes, I also tested the surface of that bullet for blood.
And
Got a positive result on a presumptive test.
and did you do anything else?
No other than photograph it.
Okay. What's the next bullet we have there?
Number 2 is the bullet found, which apparently passed through the wall. Examining that under the stereoscopic microscope, the nose of the bullet is filled with a white material that looks to be consistent with plaster. I didn't do any further testing of it to determine if it was plaster. I again swabbed the surface of the bullet and tested that for blood and got a negative result.
Okay. Assuming that we have a bullet that went through a plaster wall, would it appear that that would be consistent with a hollow point going through the wall gathering material?
Yes, sir.
And that was reported to you to be the bullet that did go, in fact, through the plaster wall?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, did you examine another bullet?
Yes, sir.
And which bullet was that?
This was the bullet that was found under the sheet on the bed. Examining this bullet, I did not see anything remarkable within the nose of the bullet. I again swabbed the surface of the bullet and got a negative result for blood.
Okay. Now, assuming that we have at a hollow point at a very high velocity before it hits anything, if it passes through material, would you expect material to gather in? Is it consistent that material will gather in the bullet itself?
Objection to the very high velocity, should quantify that.
Well, overruled. Did you examine the type of ammunition in this case, Mr. Brown?
I'm aware of what type of ammunition.
All right, go ahead. Just rephrase it using that terminology.
Assuming that we have the hydroshock ammunition, and I'm talking about when you first shoot a bullet out of a gun, it's going pretty fast, is that correct?
Fast is a relative term. Certainly faster than I can move.
Okay. And I take it that after the bullet passes through a body, it's going to be moving at a much slower speed.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at the speed that a bullet would go out of this gun using this kind of ammunition, would you expect that when it passed through a material that it might take some of that material into the hollow point of the bullet?
It's very possible. It's not invariably that it would happen, but
Okay.
not unlikely.
And I take it that as the speed gets lower, there's less chance of it gathering material.
It depends on what type of material we're looking at.
Okay. And was the not finding of any of the material from, at least from any kind of material at all or anything from the Betty, consistent with Mr. Doherty's findings on that bullet?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, at some point in time, did you examine the sheets and the blanket and the mattress cover?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And Ron, if we could just have marked for identification, just so we have it, the mattress at this time.
We'll actually mark the mattress itself.
It's not the original mattress, Sharon. I don't see, I don't have a particular objection, but
If you want it marked, go ahead then.
Just so that we have it. I'm not saying it to be introduced evidence. I just wanted it at this point in time, just to have it.
All right. Defendants V.
Okay. Now, at some point in time, did you examine the sheets and the blanket?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What was the purpose of examining the sheets and the blanket?
Basically, to try to reach some conclusion as to how the events may have occurred by trying to place them in some reasonable manner to learn as much as possible from the evidence.
Did you do some examination or look at the evidence in a ballistic sense of looking to where the bullets ended up, what kind of gun was used, how the gun would be fired?
I examined them in the sense of trying to determine how the bullets would have struck the materials relative to this case. Yes.
Okay. And I take it that you were able to look at Mr. Wolbert's photographs as well as his report?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you look at, as a criminalist, when you're trying to determine something about where someone is shot, is it only ballistics or firearms that can be used?
No, in the reconstruction process, as I indicate, it's a process of elimination that we will use whatever physical evidence or examinations of the evidence or inferences from that evidence to test various theories. In some cases, it would be primarily firearms. In some cases, it might be shoe prints. In some cases, fingerprints. In some cases, blood stain patterns. In some cases, it might be fiber transfers or hair transfers.
Now, in this case, then you did some review of the ballistics, and in this case, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And did you use some fiber transfers on the bullets? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you do anything with the serology, the blood?
In the sense of relying upon Mr. O'Donnell's report, yes, I did not do any serology myself, except testing one particular stain for a presumptive test.
Okay. Did you do anything in blood stain patterns?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what did you do in regards to that?
I examined the blood stains on the sheets and blanket in relation to each other as they were found at the scene and as I could place them on the mattress, trying to reconstruct the events.
Now, did you actually place the sheets and blanket back on the bed?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And have you done that again today here?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Now, did you do it so that they appeared to be the same as they were in the photograph that you saw, the crime scene photographs?
I placed them as close as I could to the crime scene photographs, yes, sir.
Okay. And how were you, for instance, the top blanket, was there a way that you were able to determine what was on the bottom of the bed and what was on the top of the bed? I mean, I'm saying the foot of the bed. What part of the blanket was down here at the foot? What part was here at the?
Yes,
Objection as to what time and what the witness is speaking about, before or after during the shooting?
Well,
Sustained, just rephrase it.
sir, at the time that you looked at the photographs, that's the only time that you saw the blankets. It's from the photographs, is that correct?
yes, the police photographs that were taken after the shooting.
Okay, and looking at those photographs, were you able to look at them and showing you here equals 4 into evidence? Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes, I do.
And was that a photograph that you looked at?
That was one of them, yes.
And were you able to determine where the blanket was in relationship to the bed and its position here?
Yes, I was.
And how were you able to do that?
By looking at various landmarks on the blanket, that the blanket is hand stitched, and looking closely at the photograph and closely at the blanket, the different corners of the blanket are actually different, and we can identify which corner that is that's depicted there in photograph B that you're holding.
Okay, so assuming that we have photograph B on number 4, and assuming this was a photograph actually taken to the police officer by the police officers, even though they removed the blanket from the bed, you can place it in that position because this blanket has unique characteristics on each corner.
I can replace it fairly closely. We don't have a body on the bed now, and we don't have the quilt or bedspread, whatever the top covering is. But with those limitations, yes, I placed it as closely as I could.
Okay, so we know, for instance, the corners are placed in the correct place in the photograph.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, were you also able to place the sheets by looking at the photograph, place them in a relative position of how they were found in the photograph?
Yes, sir.
And how were you able to do that?
If I could step down, possibly.
Sure. Is that okay, Your Honor?
Sure is.
The most significant point I was using was a landmark here of 2 fairly large stains on the top sheet, and placing those relative to the blood spatter on the bottom sheet. And it's been moved since this morning. In the photograph B of exhibit 4, this fairly large stain can be seen just about on the edge of the mattress, and the smaller stain just above it. I still don't have it quite right, but approximately this position. Then we can see the hem of the sheet coming down to the right of the sheet. This was the primary landmark I was using to try to place the top sheet in the same relative position.
Okay. And by using that landmark, were you also able to tell which part of the sheet was facing up, what part down?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so right now, and we were able to tell obviously that corner was over the corner you're next to, which would be the top portion nearest to where Linda Broderick's head was. You were able to place that there, is that correct?
Yes, again, here on the Marge stain that would be adjacent to her head, we can see the same outline of the shape of the stain there.
Now, were you also able to place the bottom fitted sheet on the bed in the same place? In other words, the corners were in the correct corners as they were in that photograph?
Yes, sir.
And how were you able to do that?
You're referring to the bottom fitted sheet or?
Yeah, the bottom fitted sheet.
Well, again, this is the same heavy stain here on the bottom sheet. And you can see the blood spatter pattern here, which is visible in photograph 4B.
Okay, now you referred to a blood spatter pattern on that fitted sheet. What is a blood spatter pattern?
Spatter basically refers to blood that's had some energy imparted to it to cause the blood to break into smaller droplets and to fly through the air. By way of explanation, if I were to cut my finger, for example, and the blood is dripping, I'll have a pretty uniform size drops of blood, about a 20th of a milliliter each drop. They'll be uniform because of the viscosity and surface tension of the blood. On the other hand, if I have blood in my hand and I slap my hand, the energy there will cause the blood to break up into smaller droplets. So generally speaking, very generally, the smaller the droplet, the higher the velocity of blood, or the higher the velocity that blood was traveling, and the greater the amount of energy that was imparted to that blood. So generally speaking, if we have large blood droplets, that indicates a low velocity. A very small droplet of blood indicates a high velocity.
And I take it that there's all variations of the drops, all the way from being almost vapor to very large drips.
Well, to about a 20th of a milliliter would be the largest drop that you get.
Now, did you also place what was the bottom sheet, the bottom fitted blanket, the mattress cover?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and how did you do that?
Again, there was blood on the corner of that, but there's also a hole in the mattress pad, which corresponds in position to the hole in the bottom sheet.
Okay, so you were able to match up the hole and the mattress cover in the same place?
Yes, sir.
I take it if you took the mattress cover and put it on this end of the bed, then obviously the mattress cover, the streak in it or the run in it would have been down on this end of the bed.
That's correct.
Okay. Was there any blood stains that soaked through to the mattress cover?
Yes, they correspond generally with the pattern on the bottom sheet here.
Okay.
And I was using that as well,
Now,
determining that they were in the same position.
okay, now, so were you able to then, when you put this back together, were you able to measure the distance of, we have a hole in the middle of the sheet here, is that correct? Or in the middle of this stain?
Well, it within the stain, it's not in the middle of the stain or in the middle of the sheet, it's within the stain.
Okay, and was that identified as anything making that hole?
Well, it appeared consistent with a hole made by a bullet, which is not coming in nose first.
Okay, so, and I take it that when a bullet passes through a body, or it can sometimes change directions?
Normally, it will change direction, yes, it will normally not go through nose first. The center of mass of the bullet is generally behind the center of it, and the bullet will tumble and become unstable.
Okay, so this bullet appeared to be, when it hit that sheet, rather than nose first, was the back of the bottom or the side of the bullet?
Well, it was not making a nice round hole as it would if it were fired directly from the gun into the sheet.
Okay.
I'm not sure which part of the bullet would be hitting first, but
Now, were you able to measure then, after you set it up on the bed, as far as where where the sheet was and the mattress cover in relationship to the hole, were you able to measure from the edge of the bed to the hole and see what the distance is?
yes, that distance is about 13 inches 13 and a half inches to the edge of the mattress.
Okay. Now, there was a exit wound in Linda Copina's back, was there not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were you able to, was there anything in the autopsy report where there was a measurement of the wound from the top of the head to where the exit wound was?
Yes, the autopsy report indicated that the exit wound was 13 and a half inches below the top of the head.
Okay, and this measured, what was this measurement here?
It's a little hard to figure out exactly where the edge of the mattress is, but it's 13 and a half inches.
Okay, so you didn't use dummies on measuring this, did you not?
No, I just used the ruler.
Okay. And did you do any measurements to find out where this was in relationship to how far it was from the center of the bed at all?
Yes, I did all of it. All I did was use a string across, fold the string in half and see where center was. I didn't actually make a note of that distance.
Okay, so when you're standing at the end of the bed and looking at it, that hole is actually to the left of the midline, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And were you able to, was there any measurements in the autopsy report as to how far the exit wound was from the midline on Linda Copina?
Yes, I believe it indicated 5.5 inches to the right of the.
Okay, so if someone was laying on the bed face up, then the right of midline is,
The midline would be this side of the hole.
okay. So where you placed your ruler, assuming that if you were to go 5.5 inches over from where this hole was, we would be able to place the person's midline right there in the bed, is that correct?
If the person is lying straight on the bed.
Okay, but some here from the bed, from the point of that midline to there is 5.5 inches.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, and when you look at the bottom cover, was that also consistent with the hole in the top sheet?
Yes, the way it's placed right now, I believe the holes superimpose. They don't. They can, depending on how taut the sheet is, exactly how this cover is put on.
Okay, but they're within centimeters of each other. It's just to get them exactly aligned.
They're within about 1/8 of an inch now of superimposing.
Okay. Now, did you mentioned the fact that there is such thing as blood stain analysis. What is a blood stain?
Blood stain is what's left after blood dries on something.
Okay. And were you able to find blood stains on this evidence? Okay. And where can you just point to us a blood stain, for instance?
For example, there's a large blood stain here.
Okay. And I take it from the photographs, you can see that Linda Copina's lying in that position, and that's consistent with finding a blood stain.
Yes, I would expect to find a blood stain under her body based on the photographs and my knowledge of the case.
Okay. Now, were you able to also, are there blood stains that are on this sheet that do not appear in the photographs?
Yes, there are.
Okay. And where are those blood stains?
Generally, most of the stains that are over on the, would be the right side of the bed if you're facing from the foot. Basically, all of these stains do not appear in the photographs. There is one stain on approximately the center of the bed that does appear in the photographs. I'm not certain whether it's this one or not.
Here are some blow-ups, and again, I'm sorry if you can't see it, referring to people's A, E, and F, do they help you see which ones were originally in at least the photographs?
Yes, well, this smear here appears in photograph F, although it does not appear in the photographs that show Linda's body on the bed.
So at the time Linda's body was discovered in the bed, this elongated blood stain was not there.
That's correct.
And so somehow that was transferred after that photograph.
That's correct.
And is there such thing as a transfer?
Yes.
And what is that?
Transfer stain would refer to a stain where we have one bloody object that contacts another object and blood is transferred from the bloody object to what was previously not bloody.
Okay. And is there, and the other stains that you've indicated on as you're facing the foot of the bed, which would be on the right side, are those, do these appear in the original photographs?
No, they don't.
And what do they appear to be?
They appear to be very likely to be transfer stains.
Okay.
I can't tell for certain as to most of these whether they are or possibly blood dripping.
But we have a photograph.
They're basic. They appear most consistent with transfers.
We have photographs here of the bed without Linda Coquina in it, obviously after she's been moved. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there's no blood transfers over on that side, is there?
No, they do not appear in photograph F.
Okay. Now, could that be, those blood transfers be caused by somebody taking the sheet off the bed and just folding it up together?
I think that's the most probable explanation for how those things got there.
Now, is there a way to preserve, you have a sheet, a bottom sheet here, and you've removed the body in the top one. Is there a way to preserve the evidence in at least that state, as far as blood evidence?
The best way to preserve the pattern would be to let the material dry and then carefully fold it up.
Okay. And it would appear that in this case, that somehow blood was transferred from somewhere onto the sheet in another position.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, you indicated that there was a blood, okay. Now, the way that we have the blanket here now is the way that is close proximity to the way it was in the photograph. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Was there a time when the sheet, well, let's first of all take the sheet and the blanket and move it. If you can show us where the hole was in the blanket and in the sheets as it sits here now.
The two holes in the sheet are located here.
There's some, if you could just move over so some of the other jurors can see it.
Here, adjacent to this large stain that was on the edge of the bed.
Okay, and where's the hole in the blanket?
On the blanket is located here. This edge of the blanket appears to have been originally the top edge of the blanket as it would have been sitting on the bed in the normal configuration.
Okay. Now, if we, first of all, now if we just take the blankets and the sheets the way they are right now on the bed and move them back, then we have at least the corners where they would go, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so if we take this sheet and move it over here, and we can assume this is the way a bed would normally be made up. It opens up just like this, is that correct?
I would think that, yes, the sheets and blanket would be fairly much square on the bed.
Okay. Now, were you able to, where were the holes that were in the sheets now when you fold the blanket back?
They are located here, which would be right of center, viewing the bed from the foot of the bed.
Okay. And where would where's the hole for the,
Hole in the blanket is located here, which is a little bit left of center as the view from the foot of the bed.
okay. And was there any other holes in the blanket or the sheets themselves?
I saw no other holes that appeared to be consistent with bullet holes.
Okay. Now, assuming that, and I take it that what you say is when you look at evidence and you look at the ballistics, you try to make some determination as to what might have happened. Is that correct? Or things that are at least consistent with what the evidence you found?
Objection.
Sustained.
The holes that were, you saw the photographs and the trajectories that Mr. Wahlberg did of Mr. Daniel Broderick, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And he had Mr. Broderick somewhere on this side of the bed, which is you're standing at the foot, is on the left side of the bed, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And it appears to be that the bullets, that the bullet that was in Mr. Broderick had passed through the hole in the blanket and the hole in the sheet, is that correct? From the material that you found.
Based on material in the nose of the bullet, yeah.
Okay. Now, you didn't find any bullet over here on the, in the position when the bed is in this made-up position that would be, you didn't find any holes here, which would be the left side of the blanket, did you?
Objection.
Or you can answer that.
But only, the hole up here would be slightly to the left of the center of the blanket of approximately 3 inches to the left.
Okay, and a foot and a half, 2 feet from the edge of the bed.
Depends on how high you make the bed with the blanket.
Okay, and I'm talking about from this edge of the bed, the left edge of the bed.
From about 2 feet.
Okay, now, and the sheets, the holes in the sheets, did you find any on this side of?
No, the only holes are over here on the right side.
Okay. Now, is it, and it would appear that the holes, as you saw them on the blankets and the sheets, were somewhere up on the bed itself at the time that you reconstructed it from the photograph. Is that correct?
Sorry.
The holes, when you reconstructed the blanket and you reconstructed the sheet, the holes were on the top up here on the bed, or close to the edge of the bed.
Yes, they were near the edge of the bed.
Okay, they weren't down on the floor where Mr. Broderick's body would have been.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, is it consistent, and you can have a seat again, when you determine where someone might have been shot in a bed, what does it tell you as to the points of where the bullet entered and where it struck the bed? In other words, when you're looking at a photograph of somebody and you have a point of entry and an exit, and then you have a strike point on the bed, what does that tell you?
Objection, unless he's gonna relate to some specific evidence on this bed.
Rephrase it. Okay. Sir, when you determine from using ballistics alone, and you have 3 points, an entry wound, an exit wound, and then a strike point, you make some determinations of where the person would be positioned to have those all lined up. Is that correct?
Yes, you would generally make the assumption that the bullet's traveling in a straight line.
Okay. Now, does that tell you where the person was 2 minutes before they were struck by the bullet?
No, that would only be at the moment the bullet passes through the body.
Okay. So if somebody was sleeping on, and again, from the foot of the bed, the right side of the bed, and for some reason was sleeping on their side and started to roll over and was shot, you would find the patterns that we have here on the bed as far as the hole in the sheet underneath. Is that correct?
I'm going to object to leaving, Your Honor.
Well, sustained, just, that's where we expect to find the hole in the sheet.
Yeah, where would you expect to find that hole in the sheet if the person started here but was shot when they rolled into that position?
Well, again, I would expect the bullet to travel in pretty much a straight line through that person, and wherever that person was at the instant of being shot, the bullet would exit in a straight line from there.
Okay. From the blanket, it would appear that at some point in time, the a bullet went through the blanket, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is this, and it would appear that that bullet went through Mr. Broderick?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, is it consistent with the hole in that side of the blanket and Mr. Broderick being on this side of the bed without the bed being moved? The blanket the way it is now, is it consistent that Mr. Broderick is shot here on this side of the bed, the left side as you're standing at the end, with the hole where it is?
Objection assumes facts not evidence, there's no proof whatsoever that was the position of the bed.
You can answer that.
No, it would appear that the blanket would have to be pulled over to the left side of the bed.
Okay. So as a criminalist, then you would have to look to see why Mr. Broderick would be shot over here, why the hole is, how the blanket moved over here. Is that correct? Would be one of the things that you would look at the evidence to determine.
Well, it would certainly raise a question of why is the hole on one side if he's on the other side?
Okay.
That the blanket had to have been moved.
Okay. If somebody was laying in a bed and started rolling very quickly and pulling the blanket with them this way, then the blanket would move over. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that would be consistent with somebody being shot here, but the blanket being pulled over this way.
Yes, sir.
The, you mentioned, blood spatters. Did you find some blood spatters on the bed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, where did you find those?
Generally on this area, on the top of the bottom sheet, and in this area on the side of the bottom sheet.
Okay, now were you able to find them in one area more concentrated than the other? I mean, were they more concentrated in the top part, the bottom part, or the side part?
I don't know that they're more concentrated, particularly they're generally in this area. They look consistent with being from one spatter.
And how would you describe the velocity of those spatters?
This would be what I would consider to be a high end of the medium velocity of blood spatters.
Okay. And can blood spatters be caused by, can they be caused by exit wounds?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so when a bullet comes out of a body, blood comes out with it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you would see a spatter pattern from that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is this?
You would if there is something nearby to catch the blood.
Okay. And so assuming that you have somebody that's over a sheet and over this sheet, and the wound is somewhere above the sheet, would you expect to see a spatter pattern on the sheet?
Yes, I would.
Okay. And is this spatter pattern consistent with the kind of spatter pattern you see from an exit wound?
Objection, ask the answer.
Overall. Yes, generally. If I can elaborate a little bit.
Yes.
Where we have a very high energy event, such as a gunshot, we will have blood breaking into very small droplets and almost be atomized. That is not a pattern that I see here. However, surrounding that area where we'll have this atomized blood, then we'll have a larger pattern of larger droplets, although still a reasonably high velocity pattern. And this pattern that I see here is consistent with the larger pattern that I'm referring to.
Okay. And if somebody was up on their shoulder, leaning over, reaching for something, and there was an exit wound in this part of the arm, would that, front of the shoulder, would that cause, it was close enough to the bed, a pattern to develop such as this?
The point of origin would have to be beyond the edge of the bed here somewhat. If the point of origin were back here over the bed, then we're not going to get the blood on the vertical portion of the bed sheet. In order to allow the blood to hit this area of the sheet where it's vertical, we have to have the origin off the bed a little bit. Now we can tell that that's not too far away. It's not, for example, over here, because we see some void areas in here where there is no blood spatter. And this is generally the result of some blocking because of the convolutions of the sheet, that we're getting the stain only on the top portion and not the bottom portion of these wrinkles. So the point of origin here would have to be relatively close to the edge of the bed, but slightly away from the edge of the bed.
Okay, so if someone was leaning over the bed with a point of where there was some blood spatter, that would be consistent with that, as long as they were over the edge of the bed.
As long as the exit wound is slightly over the edge of the bed.
Okay. And did if you were to have, now that blood was, at least from the reports, was consistent with Mr. Daniel Broderick's blood, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, were their blood typed, was Mr. Broderick and Mrs. Broderick's blood typed at the time of the autopsy?
Yes, sir.
And what was Mr. Broderick's type?
According to the toxicology report, he was type O.
Okay, and what was Linda Broderick's blood type?
AB.
Will a cough cause blood spatters?
Yes, it can.
Okay, and what kind of blood spatters do you see?
What I associate with a cough, and of course, the person has to have blood in his mouth and it coughs to cause a blood spatter, is a wide range of size of the spatter, from large stains down to very small stains.
And did this appear, at least from what you saw, would be consistent with it?
I can't rule it out completely, but I don't see the larger stains that I would normally associate with a cough.
Okay. Now, I take it you don't know how necessarily this was preserved, is that correct? The evidence?
Only in general terms, that it was pushed together into a paper bag.
Did you have any, from all the evidence that you saw, did you have any arguments with Mr. Wolberg's opinion that all the shots appeared to be fired from as we're looking at the bed, the right side of the bed, from approximately the same location?
No, I have no dispute with that.
And did you have any dispute with the approximate distance that the shots were, how far the person was away from the bed? In other words,
No, basically he had one shot that had 3 points, fixed points, that he shot through the wall, in which the line of the shot had been very precisely determined. Then we have the shot into the nightstand, which would be approximately the same as that. And then the shots into the body would be consistent with that.
so so at least as to Mr. Wolberg indicating that the person was just inside the door of the room and some distance from this side of the bed, that was something that appeared to be consistent with all the evidence you saw.
Objection, Your Honor, that's not the evidence. Mr. Wolberg did not say she was just inside the doorway.
No, it's a stain, just rephrase it.
The distance that he placed her inside the doorway and on this side of the bed appeared to be consistent with what you saw.
Yes, I had no disagreement with that.
I have no further questions.
I assume you'll be more than about 4 minutes on cross.
Yes.
We take our morning recess at this time, ladies and gentlemen. Please remember the admonition. We'll be in recess until, will 5 to 11 give you enough time? In recess till 5 to 11. Mr. Early, did you want to reopen?
Yes.
People have no objection?
No, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Bell, did you receive some information about the pajamas tops that Linda Broderick was wearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what side of the pajamas tops was the hole in?
In the right side.
Okay. And we're talking about the entry hole?
Yes, sir.
And it was on the left side of the body, the entry hole?
Yes, sir.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examine.
One moment, Your Honor. Did you want to?
Yes.
Okay.
And sir, you did not try to, there was no bedspread available to you that's in the pictures to try to put that on bed, was there?
That's correct. Cross.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Bell.
Morning.
You have indicated that basically what you're saying is you don't have any disagreement with the position of Elizabeth Broderick when she shot Dan and Linda Broderick with respect to how Mr. Wolver testified. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so, I mean, if we look at the bed here, obviously the doorway that she entered, that you're aware of, is on this side of the bed, right?
That's correct.
And there's no way she could have shot them from the doorway, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so she had to come into the room, and she had to turn around and stand next to the bed and point the gun at him to shoot him, correct?
Well, depending on what you mean by next to the bed, somewhere over on the side of the room by the fireplace.
All right, well, you indicated that you felt the most accurate of the shots, that you could line up with the laser, and that Gene Wolver lined up with the laser. And maybe just so that you can see, it's crowded here. You said that the most accurate was the one that went through the wall because you've got the three lineup points, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so that laser picture shows Mr. Wolbert standing in that position next to the bed, right?
Should close to the bed. I'm not sure just what you mean next to the bed, but
Okay. Well, you're indicating that you don't have any disagreement with the position of Mr. Wolbert in relation to the bed and how it's shown in this photograph, correct?
I do not have any dispute. That's correct.
Okay. And when he put a mark over here on this diagram, this yellow mark, which is, those that should identify. Maybe can you see that? People 60? 63? That's an accurate mark on the diagram as well.
Well, I haven't spent a lot of time trying to decide that to. Relative to this nightstand, it appears in photograph C that perhaps he's a little bit farther back. His front of his body would be approximately the middle of the X.
Okay. Well, looking at that photograph there where it shows the line through the wall, Mr. Wolbert is standing in this approximate position, about this close to the bed, isn't it?
He's standing more, as far as I can tell, more toward the center of the bed.
More towards the center of the bed, right about here then.
Maybe just a couple of inches farther back. But
Okay, right about
no, I'm sorry, this way.
this way.
Approximately there, yes.
So she came in the doorway, she had to come around where the nightstand was, she turned around, pointed the gun, and shot at two people in the bed, correct?
Your Honor, objection argumentative.
Same.
Would you have any disagreement with this position, and this is the approximate position she was when she shot, for example, Linda Broderick through the chest?
I think that would be consistent, yes.
Now, this bed is obviously higher than the bed was in the bedroom, correct?
That's correct.
So she's actually, Linda Broderick would have been down a little bit, right like this when she's being shot, correct?
Approximately.
Okay. And when you measured, you indicated that you did some measurements of the blankets and where the holes are in the blankets. When you did those measurements, you had the blankets set out flat on the bed like you had before when counsel was asking you questions, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So obviously there weren't bodies in in the bed and covered by the blankets when you were doing your measurements or looking at the blankets, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and obviously, as you can see, when you put bodies in the bed covered by the blankets do a lot of moving. There's a lot of rippling and a lot of change in the blanket, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it's not consistent at all with the blanket that's laying flat on the bed.
I'm not sure what you mean that it's not consistent. I mean,
Well, does the position of the blanket here with bodies inside look the same to you as the blanket when it's laid flat out on the bed?
well, it's consistent in that we have the same corners and the same relative locations. We now have mannequins underneath the blanket.
Okay. It is fair to say that you have no idea and you have no way of knowing the exact position of the blankets when Dan and Linda were shot, correct?
Not the exact position. There is certain information that is revealed.
Well, there's a bullet hole in the blanket you've referred to. One hole that's consistent with a bullet hole, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you put the body of Dan Broderick in with his back to the defendant when she shot him, that hole in the blanket, as it's set right now, is pretty consistent with that shot in the middle of his back, isn't it?
With a little stretching.
Sure. I mean, you move the blankets move. You move the blanket a little bit, and it's right there, right where the hole is. Correct? Okay. And I mean, we can surmise that the blanket was right there where the hole is because we've got a hole through the blanket. We've got a hole through a body, right?
Well, the blanket would have to be pretty close to the body. The blanket can move somewhat after the bullet strikes it, and the bullet can cause some movement in the blanket.
Okay. Well, I mean, we really don't know that this was the exact position of the blanket because, in fact, the blanket could have been down like this, totally off of Linda. We don't know how it was when she was shot, correct?
Well, we know that it was below the level of her wound at the time she was shot.
Right. The blanket wasn't covering her wound.
That's correct.
Okay. So her chest, as you were standing here, you'd be able to see her chest and you'd be able to see her head. She wasn't underneath the blanket, right?
But that mannequin represented her body, yes.
Well, we're talking about her real body. When her real body was on that bed, where she shot in the chest, there wasn't a blanket covering it, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So if you're standing next to the bed, you'd be able to see her chest, you'd be able to see her head.
Well, they would be exposed.
Okay. Now, is it your position that Elizabeth Broderick shot all 5 of her shots from the same basic position? Or did she move around the bed after she shot a couple of them so that she could get a better shot?
Can you resume what it's saying?
Yes, I'm sorry.
From all the facts I know of the case, I think it's probably most consistent that she stayed in pretty much the same position.
There would be,
Taking into account what I understand percipient witnesses indicated about the sequence of the shooting and how quick the shots were, I would think it much more consistent that she would be in one basic position. That's not, of course, part of the physical evidence. And so if I don't consider that, then yes, some of the shots might have been from a different location.
okay, well, if we just look at the physical evidence, we do know that she's standing on this side of the bed as shown in photograph C when she makes that shot, correct?
That's correct.
And we do know that she's standing on that same side of the bed when she makes the shot into the nightstand in photograph D, correct?
That's correct.
And we do know that she's standing in the same position relative to the bed when she makes that shot into Linda Colcana, right?
Approximately. We don't have as many points in that as we did with the in photograph C, but it's certainly consistent with being in the same position, yes.
Aren't there 3 points for photograph A as well? Isn't there an entrance, an exit, and a bullet hole in the bed underneath her?
We don't have 3 fixed points. The 2 points in the body are not fixed, and in fact, the body has apparently moved after that shot.
Oh, but I'm talking about when she was shot. I mean, you indicated yourself, we're talking about the position she's in when she's shot. we know that we've got an entrance, we've got an exit, and we've got a bullet hole right underneath her. So we've got 3 points when she was shot, don't we?
Yes, we do, but those 2 of those points are not fixed and they have moved since she was shot. So,
No, but if you take her, despite the fact that she's moved since she's shot, if you take her body, if you take Linda, you've got an entrance, you've got an exit, and you've got a hole right here in the mattress. All 3 of these things line up with her in that position, don't they?
well, there can be several positions that she might be in to cause that the body is flexible. We can move our shoulders one way or another. We can move our elbows. So there is some variation in where she could be to cause those 3 points to line up.
Okay, I think that's probably a given that we can move body parts, but with respect to her chest where she's shot, and with respect to the hole in the bed, those things are fixed, aren't they?
No, her chest is not fixed.
The hole in her chest is not a fixed point?
Her body has moved after that shot.
Well, I know, but there's no question, is there, where the hole is in her chest. We know she was shot in the chest in one particular spot.
Relative to her body, we know where that hole is.
Right, and we know that there's one particular hole on her body that's the exit wound, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and that's a straight path through her body essentially, right?
Essentially, although we don't necessarily know exactly where that fixed path is, if we move our body around, there can be some slight variation.
Okay, so you're saying that there can be some slight variation of her position, but it's basically consistent with her lying on the bed in that position. Obviously, she has to be turned a little.
During the recess, I took a couple of quick measurements of your probe through there, and the measurements don't match the autopsy measurements. So
Well, without getting,
with that caveat,
I don't want to get overly technical here. I don't think we need to get overly technical.
Your Honor, I have an objection. It's argumentative.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be argumentative.
That's a question.
You indicate, at least I thought it was my understanding, is that you had no basic disagreement with what Mr. Wolberg testified with respect to the position of the bodies and the position of the defendant when she shot them. Is that correct?
I do not have a disagreement with Mr. Wolberg as to the position of the shooter. Now, as to the position of Daniel Broderick's body,
No, we're talking about Linda right now.
you said bodies in your
Okay.
question.
I'm sorry. Just with respect to Linda, was she shot in the chest? Was there an entrance wound in her chest?
Yes.
Okay. And so there's no question that her chest was up and she was shot when she was lying on the bed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And there isn't any question that she took that shot through her chest before she took the next shot through the back of her head.
I have no question about that.
And there also isn't any question that after Elizabeth Broderick stood on this side of the bed and shot the bullets into these 2 people, that she had to walk around the bed to the other side, come all the way over here to pick up the phone, correct?
If she picked up the phone after the shooting, that's correct.
Now, there is a possibility that she shot 2 or 3 or 4 shots from that side of the bed, and Dan dove off the bed, and she came around and she put the last bullet into him as he was lying on the ground. That's a possibility, isn't it?
I cannot totally eliminate it. I do have quite a few problems with that scenario.
And if the problems with that scenario are relatively the same that Mr. Wolberg testified to. He felt that it was more likely and more reasonable that she took all 5 of her shots from this basic position, correct? you agree with Mr. Wolbert?
I think you're putting quite a few things into your question there of assumptions. I do have some disagreements with Mr. Wolberg as to the significance of some of the evidence here. And I have other reasons for believing that it's not likely that it happened as you indicated, besides what Mr. Wolberg testified to.
Okay, but isn't it correct to say that you think she took all 5 of her shots from this position on the right side of the bed?
I think that's the most probable.
Okay. She could get her bullet into those 2 bodies from this side of the bed, obviously.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, this isn't the actual mattress that was at the scene, is it?
No, ma'am.
So there could be, we're allowing for the fact that there could be some variations in the actual mattress and with respect to how you fitted the sheets on there, is that correct?
There could be some minor variation. The sheets certainly seem to fit this mattress. It is a standard queen size mattress.
Standard queen size mattress, so it's probably pretty close, but it's not necessarily exact. Is that fair to say?
Without having the other mattress, which I've never had the opportunity to view, I can't say.
Okay, you never saw the mattress or the strike mark in the mattress?
I never saw the mattress, that's correct.
When were you first retained on this case?
I was first retained very shortly after the event.
And you looked at the evidence very shortly after the event, correct?
I saw some of the evidence shortly after the event.
You saw the bullets and the sheets and the blanket?
I recall seeing the bullets. I don't recall whether I saw the sheets and the blankets and thereafter. I believe when we viewed it early on, we were not allowed to view them outside of the bag. It was still in the bag.
When you say very shortly after the event, you're talking about very shortly after November 5th, 1989, when Dan and Linda were killed, correct?
Yes, it was, I believe, the latter part of November.
And you didn't testify in the last trial, did you?
No, I did not.
Now, obviously, when you set this situation up here, you essentially reconstructed the blankets, the position of the blankets and the mattress pad and the blanket on the mattress, correct?
Yes, based on the photographs primarily.
And you didn't have any difficulty doing that based on the photographs?
Well, to some extent, because a lot of the covering of the bed was the comforter or bedspread, which was not available. But as far as the areas that are visible in the photographs of the sheet and the blanket, I didn't have too much trouble now.
Okay, that's one of the reasons that police officers take photographs of the scene before anything is seized, so that if it needs to perhaps be reconstructed later, it can be done. Is that fair to say?
Yes, photographs are probably the best way of preserving the situation at the scene.
Okay. And so the fact that the blanket was seized and the sheets were seized, that didn't prevent any reconstruction of it as far as you were concerned?
I'm sorry.
Well, there were some questions earlier of a detective about the fact that he had seized this evidence and that perhaps that caused some problem. And I'm just asking you, you didn't have any problems reconstructing the sheets or the blankets based on the fact that they had been seized from the scene?
Well, I wouldn't be able to place them on the bed if I didn't have them.
Right. Okay. And you could place them on the bed in fairly accurate manner based on the photographs?
Yes.
Okay. Now you talked about some blood stains on the fitted sheet that are not shown in the photograph. And the photograph that was taken that day of the scene, correct?
Yeah.
And you indicated that you thought that those might be transfer blood stains.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. They also might have been caused by the fact that when they were removing Linda's body, that they rolled her over before they picked her up and removed her from the bed. Is that correct?
Well, at least one of those stains apparently was, but then we have photographs taken of the bed after the removal of her body in which there are not stains that are now there.
Okay. In fact, when you look at the photograph of the actual mattress, here in these photographs, you can see those blood stains that were caused when Linda was rolled over. Is that correct? There's some on the pillow as well.
I can't say for certain how those got.
Okay, but they do appear to be blood stains consistent with the stains on that sheet.
I actually have not taken any time to really compare the mattress photographs to the sheet photographs.
Okay, is there any relevance to you in the fact that there are some blood stains on the other side of the bed caused by Linda's body being rolled over?
As long as we can identify that those stains were not part of the shooting event, then it does not necessarily cause a problem. That is, one of the concerns in a reconstruction is that we do have changes in the evidence after the event that we're trying to reconstruct. And very often we don't know whether the condition of the evidence was caused by the event itself or by subsequent handling of the evidence.
Okay.
So if we can identify which stains were present as the part of the shooting event versus which stains have been added later, then it does not cause a problem.
And it does not cause a problem in this case, correct? But when you look at the photographs here, it's clear that there aren't any stains there at the time that the bodies were found.
That's clear.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, you indicated that you did some swabbing on the bullets that you tested. The one that was identified as bullet number 1 that was found on the bed, that was the bullet that went through Linda, you said was negative for blood.
That's correct.
Okay. Was there any significance of that to you?
I found it mildly surprising that, in my experience, if you have a high velocity bullet, such as a rifle bullet, generally I do not find blood on the bullet after it's passed through a body. Lower velocity bullets more frequently do. So I was mildly surprised that I did not find blood on it, but the mere absence of blood did not indicate to me that it was not a bullet that had passed through a body.
Okay.
And again, I don't know what subsequent handling may have occurred, whether it's been handled a lot of times, and
we
by
also,
handling, the blood may have been roughed off.
we also know that the bullet went through a sheet too before it was recovered, correct?
Yes.
Now, with respect to the blood spatter that's on the side of the bed here, you indicated that you tried to put this sheet back on as close as you could to the photographs. If you could step down for just a second, sir. Taking a look at photograph B here, it is fair to say that the fitted sheet is crumpled up a little bit higher than you've got it fitted here. Isn't that correct on the mattress?
Yes, that's true.
It's fitted, it's up quite a bit. And if you do that, if you move this sheet up, obviously it moves the whole sheet over a little bit on the bed. I'm not requesting that you try to do that at this time. I'm just asking you
Well,
that.
okay, it appears that possibly it should be moved slightly. These two spots here appear to be these two spots. This spot appears to be this spot. A little hard to tell exactly which is the edge of the mattress here.
Okay.
It's pretty close.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just wanted to point out that you don't have it exactly as it was on the bed that morning. That's fair to say.
No, I got it as close as I could.
Okay. And when you have a blood splatter from someone who's been shot and from an exit wound, you would expect that there would be some directionality to that blood splatter, wouldn't you?
Yes, there is. In my experience, what you have is, as I indicated, would normally be a certain area of extremely small spatter, and then it would be like a cone of somewhat larger stains coming out.
And that's not what you have on this sheet, is it?
Yes, it is.
There's directionality on that blood splatter?
All right. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by directionality.
Well, where's the cone?
I'm sorry, if you could just stop picking up the sheet
Okay,
for a moment.
I'm sorry.
We can see from the photograph that we have the sheet somewhat convoluted here, somewhat like this. And we can see that we have a void pattern in here, which indicates to me that the stain is coming pretty much downward.
Can't that also indicate that the sheet was folded and tucked as is shown in photograph B?
That's the point I was trying to make, is that because we do have this, I'm sorry, if you're saying that it was actually put together like so,
Yes,
no,
it's,
that's not what the photograph shows.
it doesn't show that there's some tucks in the way this sheet is.
I wouldn't call them tucks, it's somewhat convoluted here, that we have ins and outs, and we have this relatively heavy stain right here. We have these stains below it, and we have a void in between. If our blood was traveling this way, we wouldn't have this type of void there.
Okay, but you indicated that you believe that Dan Broderick was shot on the bed, correct?
I'm not sure I said it in that many words. I believe that the origin of this stain is above the level of the mattress and slightly away from the mattress, and
How
that
would you
the
have-
spatter is consistent with what I would find from an exit wound.
How would you have Dan Broderick's body then when he was shot in order to get that?
I'm not sure I can move the mannequin that way, but it would be somewhat up on his elbow perhaps and leaning over the edge of the bed.
But that would get this probe all the way over here.
It would in that mannequin, but a body's more flexible than your mannequin.
Okay, but we do have an entrance and an exit wound on Dan Broderick that we can line up, don't we? And if you rotate his body over this way, then what you're telling us, aren't you, is that Elizabeth Broderick did shoot from this position, and then she moved to another position, the table's in the way, to get Dan.
Possibly if I could, I believe I'm more flexible than the mannequin. I would think that Mr. Broderick was also more flexible than the mannequin. That if we take the entrance wound about here and the exit wound about here, I can lean something like this, bending my back so that the point of entry can be, or the gun can be over there, causing this wound through my body, where the exit wound would be slightly over the edge of the bed.
So are you saying that Dan Broderick was all the way down here on the bed?
No, ma'am.
Feet off the bed? Well, how do you line up this splitter then with this exit wound?
By bending the body.
Okay. Okay, so he's on the bed in some position you're indicating, and you believe that this splatter is the splatter from the exit wound?
I believe it is consistent with an exit wound spatter. I believe it is entirely consistent with the evidence that his body can be leaning over the edge of the bed such that the exit wound will be in approximately this position.
And how do you explain the splatter that gets way down here on the sheet?
I can have a photograph again. It appears that this stain here would correspond to this stain, which again is visible here. That, as you say, this is not exactly the same mattress. We don't have the same weight on the bed, but this stain is exposed to, as the sheet was on the bed, to this position here.
The sheet is tucked up tight against the side of the bed, isn't it?
It's tight again is a relative term. It's fairly tight on the bed. It certainly appears that one can put one's hand behind there without losing one's fingers, that there's some give there.
So you're saying that the splatter came from this direction to drop on top of the bed and wrapped around as a splatter onto the side of the bed?
No, ma'am, that is not what I said.
Right?
I have said that the spatter pattern here, because it's both on the vertical and the horizontal, is consistent with a origin above the bed and slightly over the side of the bed. And that is consistent with the sheet being somewhat folded over so that we have the stains visible on the sheet where the sheet was exposed and where the sheet was overlapping somewhat, we have a void.
Is it not also consistent with Dan Broderick after he's fallen off the bed, after he's been shot, after he's breathing up blood, to lift up, to look to see how Linda is, to check on Linda, and to cough and cause that spatter? Is that not also consistent?
Again, in my experience, where we have coughing blood, we have some relatively large stains which are missing here. I can't rule it out completely. If that were the case, then it appears that he did not have any contact with the blood as he fell back down, any contact with the bed as he fell back down. There's no indications of any smears here on the side of the bed. I have tried to consider just how much he is tied up here with the bedding on the side. It sort of appears that the bedding has been pulled under his body. I can't really tell. If he were to lean up and cough, I'm not sure just how this bedding would appear. I have considered it. I can't eliminate it.
Okay, so it is possible that he lifted up on both hands to check Linda, to look at Linda, and he coughed before he collapsed back down to the ground.
I think that's possible.
Well, you indicated that there would be different size blood drops from a cough. Aren't there different size blood drops here in this splatter?
No, from a cough, we normally will get some stains that will be quite large. These are all ranging from, say, medium to small.
How do you know some of his cough didn't become part of this large blood stain there?
I don't see any indications of that within the area of the spatter pattern. That's about all I can say. This does appear to be a really consistent spatter pattern here.
A question was asked of you with respect to Linda Broderick's pajama top. Again, you have no way of knowing exactly how her pajama top was positioned on her body at the time that she was shot. Is that correct? Other than the hole in the pajama top would line up with the hole in Linda's body.
Yes, it's the hole on the right side of her pajama top would line up with the entry wound on the left side of the chest.
But that doesn't tell you anything with respect to what position Linda was in.
No, that just tells us the position of the pajama top relative to her body at the time of the shot.
You are not disputing the fact that it was Elizabeth Broderick's gun that shot the bullets into these two people, correct?
That's correct.
And you're not disputing the fact that it was Elizabeth Broderick's bullets in the gun that shot these two people?
No.
I mean, you tested the bullets too, right?
No, I relied upon Mr. Wilberg's examination.
And you're not disputing the fact that it was Elizabeth Broderick's hands that were holding the gun when they got pointed at the bodies and shot at them, correct?
No, I'm not disputing that. I'm not sure just how the physical evidence that we have would help us one way or the other with that, but my understanding of the facts is that that's a given.
And you're not disputing the fact that 3 out of the 5 shots that went into Dan and Linda's body were fatal shots.
Sorry, can I get that question again?
Each one of the shots that hit Dan and Linda were in themselves fatal shots. You're not disputing that, right?
I would rely upon the pathologist to tell us that. I'm not qualified to do that. Certainly, the shot into Dan Broderick appears to have been a fatal shot. And Linda Broderick was deceased, so.
I have no further questions.
Redirect. Yes. Sir, you looked at did Mr. Broderick have any blood on his hands?
No, sir, not based on police photos taken at the coroner's office.
Okay. So as you were able to determine, there was nothing that indicated that he reached up and grabbed anywhere with his blood and left blood anywhere on his body. Is that correct, on his hands?
That's correct. Actually, that was another possible scenario I had considered, is that after he shot, he grabbed his chest to cause that spatter pattern. That was contrary to the absence of blood on the hands.
Okay. Now, when you mentioned that the mannequins are not aren't people, obviously, when people lay down, not all the time are they stiff like a mannequin. Is that correct?
I hope not.
Okay. The district attorney, in fact, when they had the mannequin in this picture over it and had this aligned, they have the shot from Mr. Broderick coming way back here, didn't they?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So obviously, if you put him in a position where the district attorney put him in and said that because the mannequin is like that, that's where the body would have to be, you would not, the bullet would be from somewhere in the back of the room.
Yes, sir.
At least under theirs. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And also, obviously, even though I presume we're not getting over technical, but these probes are not in a position as when you measure them as the autopsy report.
That's correct.
Now, I take it even that when you take a probe, when you say it's hard to say what position is in, if somebody was to be, for instance, even sitting up and then starting to fall back onto the bed, they might be anywhere on that axis falling back on the bed when they're shot. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
So it would be very difficult. You can't say that she was laying down on the bed or she was from a position in the bed where she is, because the body's obviously moved.
Yes, sir. That's what I meant by fixed point, that the wounds in the body are not a fixed point because the body moves.
Okay. So when we talk about fixed points, we're talking about the hole in the wall, the nightstand, something, for instance, solid that unless there's an earthquake, those are the things that you presume don't move and are a fixed point.
That's true. Yes, sir.
Okay. And I take it that that's one of the things that you considered in looking at the evidence is that you had to consider that people, when they move, they can move their shoulders, when they're lunging, they get in all different kinds of positions.
Yes, sir. It becomes very difficult to determine trajectories based on injuries in the body alone.
Okay. And when you talk about something being a cone, I take it when there's a wound, an exit wound, you have the wound here, and a cone means that blood pattern is going out in a cone, is that correct?
Yes, sir. It will generate from the point of the wound outward.
Outward in all equal distance, just like a cone would. Just like, I mean, you
Not necessarily equally, but generally outward.
So when you have somebody that's over in this position, you have a wound that's, let's say, that's right here, the cone is going to come out from that wound. There's going to be a cone.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's why you can have somebody that's over to the side of the bed, and you can see a spatter pattern all around. Is that correct?
Yes, presumably there would have been a pattern on the floor and the carpeting as well.
Okay, or if there was a wall right here, you might have seen the pattern on the wall.
Well, the blood is going to come to rest somewhere.
I have no further questions.
Rick Ross?
Well, there's problems with using mannequins, but we know that nobody sits up like this, correct? If she was gonna sit up, she'd sit up like this, and that bullet would not go into that bed.
Well, she couldn't sit up like that either because she wouldn't be supported.
If you're lying down on the bed and you sit up in any way, that bullet's gonna go this direction. That's not gonna go down into the bed.
I think there's quite a few positions that body could be in.
Are you saying one of them is sitting up off the bed?
Yes, could be.
Can you show us how she'd be sitting up off the bed and that bullet would go into that hole?
Would you like me to sit on the floor and demonstrate, or? I don't know that I can do it with a mannequin.
Okay. Are you saying that you believe she was sitting up when she was shot?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay, you believe she was lying on the bed?
I think most probably she was lying on the bed.
I have a question. Further question.
Sherwood?
No, Your Honor.
Witness Bisceglia?
Yes,
Well? Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Thank you.
Have another one before?
I have two very short witnesses, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Lisa Cook. Lisa Cook.
You do solemnly swear the testimony about to give in the matter not pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Would you please have a seat with this stand?
Afternoon, officer. How are you?
Officer, could you please state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
Lisa Marie Cook, last name Cook.
Ma'am, what is your occupation?
I'm a police officer with the city of San Diego,
And how long have you been employed?
approximately 8 years.
And on November 5th, 1989, did you respond to a residence that you came to know as the Broderick residence in the Marsden Hill area?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and were you one of the first officers on the scene?
Yes, I was.
And did you have a partner?
Yes,
And who was your partner?
Dominic Vallely.
Okay, and when you arrived at the scene, was there anyone else present at that time?
Yes,
And do you remember who the person or people were?
yes.
And who was that?
Brian Forbes and Bradley Wright.
Okay. And did you have a conversation with a Mr. Forbes?
Yes, I did.
And did he ask any questions or make any statements to you at that time?
Yes, he asked me to call for an ambulance.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Question now.
No questions, John.
Witness Bisceglia?
No objection.
Sterling? No objection.
No objection.
Thank you very much, officer.
I call Mr. Cruz.
Stand right here, please. Raise your right hand so the picture swear you in.
You give someone sworn testimony about to give in the matter of this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Could you please have a seat in the witness stand, sir?
Morning, Mr. Cruz.
Sir, could you please state your full name to the record and spell your last name?
Peter Hart Cruz Jr., CRUZ.
Thank you.
Sir, what is your occupation?
I'm a police officer with the city of San Diego.
And on November, and how long have you been so employed?
Close to 8 years.
On November 5th, 1989, did you respond to a home that you come to know as the Broderick residence in the Marsden Hills area on Cypress?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and at the time that you were there, did you become aware of any dogs in or around the residence?
Yes, sir.
And how did you become aware of that?
Heard the dogs barking.
Okay, and what part? Where was that from? What part of the front or the back of the residence?
Back of the area.
Okay. And did the dogs appear to be dogs that were attached to the residence?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what did you have done with the dogs?
My partner called the animal control officers.
Okay. Were they in some kind of kennel or something? Or, I mean, they were made it so they couldn't run away. Is that correct? From the backyard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Cross-examine.
Not your honor.
Witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
No objection.
Thank you very much, officer.
Thank you, sir.
Recess.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our our noon recess at this time. Please remember the admonition not to discuss the case among yourselves, not allow anyone else to discuss it with you. Please form no opinions till it's finally submitted to you. See you at 1:30. Have a nice lunch.
Sir, could you please state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
PJ Hathaway, Hathaway.
Thank you.
Your first name is Paul,
Yes,
and do you have any nicknames?
PJ.
Okay, how did you get that nickname?
It's a long story.
One that we probably don't want to hear right now.
Probably not.
Okay. Do you know this person who was at the end of the console table, Elizabeth Broderick?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and approximately, how did you get to know her?
I started dating her daughter, Kim, a few years ago. And one thing just led to another. And she took me home one day and I met her mom and we just started becoming friends.
Okay. And when you say friends, you're talking about friends with her mother?
Yes.
Okay. And how long before, when she was arrested for the death of Dan Broderick?
Yes,
November
I did.
1989?
Uh-huh.
Would give us an approximation of how long you knew her before that date. Was it 2 years, 3 years, or the best you can do?
Best I can do is about 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
4 or 5 years. I'd say.
Okay. And she knew you as PJ?
Yes, she did.
Now, in 1987, 88, 89, do you have any hobbies, passions, things that you do?
I was surfing quite a bit at that time.
And where would you surf?
La Jolla Shores area, Windansea Beach. It's most of the La Jolla area.
Okay. And do you know where Mrs. Broderick lived in La Jolla?
Yes.
And during that time?
Uh-huh. In the Shores area.
Okay. And is that somewhat close to where you used to go surfing?
Yeah, it was right down the street.
Okay. How far would it be? Half a mile, quarter mile?
It was approximately 3 blocks, I believe, 3 or 4 blocks.
Okay. Those
Half mile, I guess. Quarter mile.
they're long blocks. Those are long residential
Yeah,
blocks.
they're long blocks.
Okay. And and how often would you see Mrs. Broderick?
It really depended. Sometimes once a week, sometimes a couple or a few times a week.
Okay. Now, in 88 and 89, are there times when you're a surfer that is the best conditions to go, or most of the surfers like to get down there?
Morning time.
Okay. And when we're talking morning time, we're talking getting there before the sun comes up?
Definitely. Dawn patrol. Early, very early.
Okay. And and during that period of time, were you doing anything for any radio stations in regards to the dawn patrol?
Yes, I was doing surf reports for a couple of radio stations in town and a couple of companies up in Huntington Beach.
Okay. The, did you ever see her, Mrs. Broderick, at the beach?
Yes, I did.
Would you see her walking?
Yes.
What time of the day would you see her?
This is early. It varied. Sometimes it's right around 6 o'clock. Could be.
Would you ever see her right at dawn when the sun was coming up walking? Yeah. And would you ever see her sitting and drinking a cup of coffee?
Yes.
How common would you say it was that you saw her down there early in the morning?
A few times a week, sometimes. Sometimes it just really depended on what time I got down there.
Was she by herself most of the time with other people?
She was by herself.
Okay. And during that time, was she someone you liked, disliked?
Oh yeah, I liked her a lot.
Okay.
Good friend.
Did you hear her at times? Was there times that you would hear her use inappropriate language?
At those times in the morning?
Would you hear her do it in the morning?
Not really. No, not to an extreme or anything.
Okay. Did you see her around her children, both her daughters and her children?
Yes.
Okay. And how frequent would those contacts be?
Well, sometimes I'd see her with the boys alone, and sometimes when I was with Kim, she would be with the boys and with Lee, and it just really depended. A couple times a week, sometimes more.
Most of the time when you would see her around the children, did it appear that her language was appropriate, nothing offensive?
It wasn't offensive around the children that I saw.
Okay. Would there be some times when she would get on the subject of her divorce or what was happening to her in court where her language would change?
Yes.
Okay. And would she appear to get angry about that?
Yes, she would.
Okay. And would she use profanity about that when she was talking about that subject?
Yes.
Would she ever talk about, in that time when she used profanity, would she ever say anything about, I ought to kill him, or?
Yes, she did.
Okay. Did you see her on November 4th? That would be a Saturday, November 4th, just before her arrest.
Yes, I did.
Okay, and do you remember who she was with?
She was with the boys, Danny and Rhett.
Okay, now when you first saw her, did she appear to be upset?
No, she was very happy-go-lucky, very happy. Didn't seem upset at all.
Okay. Did the subject somehow change to the divorce of Mr. Broderick?
Yes, it did.
And did her language change at all?
Yeah, her language definitely changed. She started using some profanity and of that sort.
Okay. Did she seem fairly angry that weekend? I mean, that time when she talked about it?
Yes, she got angry when we were talking.
Did Kim ever talk about the divorce between her mother and father?
Yeah.
Okay. Did she ever talk about her father using the system against her mother?
She said that her mom thought that her dad was using the system against her. That's what she said.
She never indicated to you that she thought her father. Mr. Hathaway, you testified last time, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And after you testified last time, were you approached by Kim Broderick?
Objection, Your Honor, vague. I believe they're friends.
Sustained.
Were you talking in regards to your testimony in the courtroom by Kim Broderick?
We talked a little bit about it.
And did she tell you that you were,
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
Sustained.
Your Honor, I would like to take this witness on and I'll make an offer of proof of why then.
Do you have a transcript you want to impeach him with? I don't know where you're going, Mr. Roy.
Yes, Your Honor, I have some statements, some signed statements I'd like to impeach him with.
Well, there's nothing to impeach yet, Your Honor.
I agree, but go ahead.
Did Kim
Your
Broderick,
Honor, I'm sorry, I'm objecting as to a leading question.
Sustained.
Okay.
did Kim Broderick talk to you about your testimony?
Yeah, we had a discussion about it.
What did she say about your testimony?
Well, we talked about how nervous I was because I was very nervous, and basically just how hard it was to do, because it was hard being in a position where I was in, and that's what we talked about, just being in the middle.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness? I would like to show him.
Certainly. For the record, let the council know what you're showing.
Sir, you had an interview with an investigator, didn't you?
Yes.
He had you go over, took some notes, had you go over them and initial them for accuracy,
Yes.
and then sign your name to them.
Yes.
You could read the first page of the notes.
Okay. I haven't spoken with the DA since the last trial.
No, just read them to yourself. Read the
Oh, okay.
page to yourself.
Okay.
Did, in the conversation, was there anything that she talked to you about about whether she was disappointed with your testimony or not?
She seemed to think that maybe I didn't say some things that I should have.
Well, didn't you say that she was upset? She thought you should be worse on her mother? That you were being too nice to her?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, she said that maybe I wasn't as strong as I should have been.
And were you trying to tell the truth when you were on the stand?
Of course.
Did she call you any names? Did she call you spineless?
Yeah, we were joking around. She called me spineless.
It's difficult for you to get here on the stand now with her in the courtroom, isn't it?
Not really. No.
Did you talk to, do you know a ex-boyfriend of hers named Tom?
I'm familiar with him, yes.
Objection irrelevant.
That answer could stand. Overruled.
Did Kim have any conversations with you about Tom and something to do with your mother's house?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
Your Honor, impeachment, Kim denied this. I'd like to go into it.
She denied she talked to this witness about Tom?
She denied she talked to anybody about Tom.
That's not true.
Well, that's overruled. Claim sustained, the objection sustained.
Did you talk to Elizabeth Broderick about things that you were told about Tom?
Yeah, yes.
And what did you tell Elizabeth Broderick?
We talked about how Tom was bothering Kim, and Kim didn't like it, and we both agreed that we didn't think that he was a very positive influence on her. And
Well, did you tell her about something that you had learned about Tom in relationships to Elizabeth Broderick's house? And what he was watching and what he was thinking of doing?
I had heard that, yeah, that
Objection, Your Honor, unless it was a conversation related to the defendant.
I was always calling for hearsay, so it's sustained at this point.
Well, did you talk to Elizabeth Broderick about things about this man Tom in her house, where he was in relation, and anything about that?
yes, we did.
Okay, and what did you tell her?
Well, I told her that I didn't think, can you repeat the question?
What did you tell Elizabeth Broderick in relationship to Tom? Did anything at all about Tom and Mrs. Broderick's house, where he was located, what he was doing in regards to her house? What he was watching, any threats that have been made?
Yes, there was talk about where Tom was watching the house that Elizabeth Broderick was living in, and when I was there with Kim, or my car was parked in front of her house, he could see that the car was parked there, and he didn't like it very much. So he would call her up and tell her that, either leaving messages on her machine or talking to Kim directly.
When you saw Kim, where was it that you usually saw her?
At her mom's house.
And did you see the boys around her mother?
Yes.
And how did they appear to be around her?
They appeared to be very happy around her. It was obvious that they really enjoyed spending time with her.
And how does Kim react now that you still like Betty, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
And how does Kim react to that?
Well, she understands that I like her mom, and
So would it help you if you reviewed the statement that you gave was about a week ago, is that right?
please, yeah.
And if I could show you the last page, right above your signature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is her attitude about your like for her mother?
Sometimes she gets upset about it.
I have no further questions.
Cross down.
Mr. Hathaway, when Kim talked to you after your testimony last time, and you indicated that she said something to you about not being as strong as you had in the past, it is true that you had said things in the past about Elizabeth Broderick that were quite a bit stronger than what she said on the stand, isn't it?
Yes.
And Kim indicated to you, and you talked about it, that you felt very nervous being on the stand and you felt intimidated being on the stand, correct?
Yeah.
And it was scary and nervous being on the stand and saying things with the defendant, Elizabeth Broderick, sitting right there looking at you, correct?
Yes.
Did Kim get angry at you or upset because you had said something that she didn't like or you had lied on the stand?
Oh, no, we were kidding around.
Did she say she wasn't going to be your friend anymore because you had said on the stand that you liked her mother?
No, definitely not.
Did she suggest to you that you in any way change your testimony or say anything when you're on the stand this time?
No, she hasn't.
The fact is, for example, when you had described seeing Elizabeth Broderick on November the 4th, the day before, when you were asked what her demeanor was like when you testified last time, you said she was a little upset.
Yes, she was upset.
Your words were she was a little upset. Actually, when you had been interviewed before, you had told an investigator that she was extremely angry. And that was an example of how you didn't quite say something as strong as you had previously said, right?
Yes,
Okay. Because you felt a little uncomfortable about it, right?
definitely.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. There's, in this testimony, he talks about real anger.
After I cross-examined him, Your Honor.
Overruled, answer stands, go ahead.
And in fact, with the fact that Kim is here today, you had asked Kim to come and be here with you when you testified, hadn't you?
Yes, I did.
Now, when you saw Elizabeth Broderick on November the 4th, again, when you testified under direct, you said that she was a little bit angry.
Yes.
Isn't it true that she was extremely angry that day?
When she first arrived, she wasn't angry. She was very happy and very, everything was going great. And then she got very angry as the conversation went on.
So she started to talk to you, when she saw you there at the beach, she started to talk to you, and as usual, she started talking about Dan Broderick, right?
Right.
That was a subject that came up often whenever you had a conversation with Mrs. Broderick, correct?
Correct.
And whenever that subject came up, she would start to get angry, correct?
Correct.
Approximately what time of day was it on November the 4th when you saw her?
Approximately around noontime, around lunchtime.
And you were kind of up on a bluff at the beach,
Yes.
and you were standing with somebody else at the time, another man who was taking photographs?
Yes, a photographer.
And you remember indicating that Elizabeth Broderick was getting so angry and the way in which she was talking, you were embarrassed about it because of this other person who was standing right there.
Yes.
And in fact, she said to you things that day, such as, and this is a quote, "That son of a bitch, he makes me so mad I could." That's what she said to you that day, isn't it?
Yes, she said that.
And she also said to you, she continued to talk about him, and she said, again a quote, "That asshole, I just want to kill him." She said that to you that day, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
And the next day she killed him, right?
Yes.
You also indicated that on that day, Saturday, November the 4th, that she was more angry than you had ever seen her, correct?
She was very angry.
And with respect to the use of inappropriate language in front of the boys, again, you indicated that occasionally you heard that. Isn't it true that you heard that frequently?
In front of the boys?
Yes.
It depended on the situation. When she started talking about Dan, Mr. Broderick, she would refer to him as some, with profanity. So in that sense, yes.
Okay. And you also heard her threaten to kill him frequently in front of the boys.
Yes.
When she was making these statements to you on November the 4th, Saturday, about wanting to kill Dan Broderick, there was no question in your mind that she was not joking. This was not an off-the-cuff remark, right?
Right.
Do you remember indicating, in fact, that when she left, your feeling to yourself was that was one pissed-off lady?
Yes.
And when she was talking to you there too, you didn't have any problems understanding what she was saying. She was making sense. She was coherent, understandable.
Yes.
Correct? Now, you indicated that you've had the opportunity to see Kim around her mother, right?
Yeah.
And I think you previously indicated that you felt she had a reasonably, from what you could see, a reasonably normal relationship with her mother.
Yes.
Although they did fight, right?
Yes, they did fight, but it was a normal mother-daughter relationship.
You didn't think that it was anything out of the ordinary?
No, definitely not.
You also saw Kim around her father when you were over at Mr. Broderick's house, right?
Yes.
And you've also indicated it was very clear to you that Kim loved her father
Yes.
and had a very good relationship with her father.
Yes, they had a really good relationship.
She felt that he was basically a normal dad, had normal rules,
Mm-hmm.
and she never expressed any fear to you of her father in any way.
No.
In fact, if she expressed fear, you've indicated that she was more afraid of her mother, that was obvious that she was afraid of her mother.
Yes.
Now, you said that you've seen the boys around their mother. You've also seen the boys around their father, Mr. Broderick, correct?
Yes.
And from what you observed, how did the boys interact with their father?
They interacted great. They really had. They seemed to get along with their dad really well, and they liked hanging out with their father, and they did a lot of things together. They seemed to enjoy their time together.
And you've indicated it was clear to you that their father clearly loved them.
Yes.
You indicated that you thought that Kim had from what you saw, a reasonable relationship with her mother. You have seen her mother get very angry on occasion and do things such as trash a drum set, and throw a guitar, and
Yes.
and that was when Kim was having a party at her house.
Yes, it was.
Had her mother given her permission to have that party?
Yes.
And what happened?
Well, we had consent to have the party, and we had the party, and everybody was having a really fun time. And then all of a sudden, Mrs. Broderick wanted the party to stop.
And what did she do?
She went down in the pool room and was telling the band to stop, and she grabbed a guitar and pushed over a drum set.
Was there an apparent reason for that?
Not really. None that I could see.
This was obviously a weekend, a time when Mrs. Broderick was there at the house, when the party was going on.
Yes.
Now, you indicated that you had some discussions with Mrs. Broderick about one of Kim's boyfriends named Tom, right?
Yes.
And it is true, is it not, that Mrs. Broderick never expressed any physical fear of Tom to you?
No, she never. On herself?
Yes.
No, never.
She didn't like the idea that her daughter was going out with Tom. She didn't like Tom, right?
Right. That was obvious.
But she never talked about herself being physically afraid. She never talked about the fact, for example, that she felt she needed a gun to protect herself from Tom, did she?
No, she never did.
And your conversations with her and these calls from Tom, they happened when Kim came back from school. She'd been gone to school in Tucson and she came back. Is that correct?
Yes.
She gets at the end of the year. She gets out of school in May.
Your Honor, maybe if we could have some rules, I asked and was objected to at this conversation with Kim. Now we have the district attorney.
Just object, Mr. Early, on your speech, would you object?
Yes, Your Honor.
It's the same.
My question was, when did Kim get back from school from Arizona? She got back in May. That's when school got out in Arizona, correct?
Yes, in May.
And do you recall that the problems with Tom or the calls from Tom came after Kim had gotten back from school, right?
Yes.
In fact, there was maybe even a grace period there of a couple of weeks to a month before that problem occurred?
As soon as he found out she was back, he would start calling. He would call, but it would usually take him a while to figure out that she was back.
I have no further questions.
For the record. Sir, the party that you related to, remember the police showing up a couple of times where the band was there asking to shut the party down?
I don't recall the police showing up that night, no.
You don't recall any problems whatsoever with that?
No, the party seemed like it was going pretty smoothly.
Okay, and what time was it that?
The incident?
Yes.
Approximately, well, the party was in full swing, so it must have been around 10:30.
And just at 10:30, it was a nice quiet party and Mrs. Broderick went nuts on the drums and guitars.
Was it a quiet party?
No, it was just a nice friendly party. Everyone was having a good time. Nothing was going wrong. And at 10:30, she just went crazy.
It wasn't a nice quiet party. It was a party, as parties go, and it wasn't quiet because there was a band, but everybody seemed to be having a really good time.
And you indicated that Kim and her father had a good relationship. Do you remember talking at all about Kim would have to sneak around her father to do things?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever talk about how problems she had with Linda in the house?
What kind of problems?
Did she ever talk to you about the problems or dislike for Linda?
She liked Linda. She liked her a lot.
Okay. The time that you were at the beach, and this is on November 4th, do you remember Mrs. Broderick taking some photographs?
Yes, I do. She had a camera with her and she was taking photos.
And when she was upset at that time, did she tell you something that Kim had told her about college money?
She said that Kim had called her and said that she was at college and she was upset because she didn't have any money. That's what she told me.
The things that you testified to as to the conversations you had on Saturday, you testified to all those last time, the last hearing, did you? Last trial?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Ross?
You only testified about them after I asked you on cross-examination, isn't that true? Do you remember?
Okay.
Your Honor, I didn't, I have an objection, it's irrelevant.
Sustained.
The comment that she made about Kim not having any money in college, her response to that was, what am I supposed to do? Send her my money, that son of a bitch? He makes me so mad I could fight him, right?
Yes.
And with respect to Kim, sometimes going around her dad's rules. Her dad had a curfew, she was supposed to be in at curfew, right?
Yes.
And sometimes she would sneak around that.
Yeah. Yes.
I have nothing further.
Anything further, Mr. Early? Witness be excused. Ms. Wells?
Subject to recording.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Hathaway. Our next witness?
Michael Campbell.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter of any whether the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Sir, could you please have a seat over this stand?
Afternoon, sir. How are you? Very well, thank you.
And sir, could you please state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
Michael Colin Campbell, Campbell.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, what is your occupation?
I'm a photographer.
And how long have you been doing that?
I've had a studio in San Diego for approximately 5 years, and I've been in photography since 1964.
Did you have an opportunity to meet an Elizabeth Broderick?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And approximately when was that?
That was about 1987. I was photographing some function, and Mrs. Broderick was one of the guests.
Did you get to know Mrs. Broderick?
She had an interest in photography, and we discussed cameras, I think, a little at that point, and a couple of other occasions after that, under similar circumstances.
Okay. And did, at some point in time, did you get commission to take some wedding photos at the Dan and Linda Broderick's wedding?
Yes, I did.
Did Mrs. Broderick ever see those photographs?
No, she did not.
Did she ever ask to see them or try to see them?
No, she didn't.
I have no further questions.
Vice Sam?
Good afternoon, Mr. Campbell.
Good afternoon.
You were not originally from here, right? You're from
You can tell
England?
from the Texas accent.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was a time when Elizabeth Broderick came over to your studio with respect to the idea of perhaps working for you. Is that correct?
Well, not exactly, but she was interested in photography and had an idea of possibly starting her own business and wanted to talk to me about that.
And she wanted to perhaps finance you in a photography studio in La Jolla.
She thought we might be able to share a space together. We would do two different types of photographic services.
When was the first time that she came over to your studio?
I really don't remember the exact date, but it was, I suppose, end of 1988. I was in Sorrento Valley at the time, so it must have been around 88.
It was sometime after you had taken the photographs at Dan and Linda's wedding, right?
Yes, but I'd talked to her about this before that.
But first time she came to your studio was after you had taken the photographs of their wedding, right?
I believe so.
When she was at the studio, you had some conversations about the fact that she was the ex, Mrs. Broderick, and you had photographed Mr. Broderick's wedding and Linda Broderick's wedding, right?
Yeah, she was the one that informed me that he was her ex-husband. I hadn't realized that at the time.
So she was the one, when she talked to you at the studio, she was aware of the fact that you had been the photographer of their wedding.
Yes, she'd seen photographs of me that her neighbor had taken at the wedding, and that's how she knew.
And when you had conversations with her during that time, the subject of driving her car through Mr. Broderick's door came up, and she denied doing that, right?
Yes, she did.
You indicated that you had heard about that. You asked her if that's true, and she specifically said, no, that's not true. It didn't happen. Dan and Linda are making that up so that they can get custody of the kids, something to that effect.
Basically, that was what you said.
And since that time, since these events, you've learned that that was not true, that in fact she did drive the car through the door. And you've indicated that you realize now that she's capable of looking you square in the eye and lying and making it totally believable.
I believed her at the time.
Objection. That's irrelevant.
Overruled. You can answer that. That's what opinion the lay witness can give.
What, I'm sorry, what was your answer? You started.
I believed her at the time.
Did she ever follow through with actually financing you, or the two of you with this photography studio?
She suggested some possible locations that, because the studio I was in was not very satisfactory. And so she had looked around in La Jolla and suggested a few places. I took a look at them, but none of them really would have worked out for me. So we didn't pursue it any further from that point of view.
You had a few conversations with her over the summer of 1989, leading.
Objection.
Sustained.
Do you recall her having a conversation with you about Dan Broderick and about the reasons why she had married him or what he was like when she married him?
Under objection. Beyond the scope.
Sustained.
Do you recall when she came over to your studio and the times that you had conversations with her, her attitude about money? How did she talk about it?
Your Honor, objection. Beyond the scope.
Sustained.
She also denied to you ever making any threats to kill Dan and Linda Broderick, right?
Yes, she did.
And you don't know whether or not she told other people that she had seen the proofs of Dan and Linda's wedding.
Only from Linda.
I have no further questions
Redirect.
this time.
Yes, when you were, the conversations you were having with, the purpose, you indicated that the meeting at your office in Sorrento Valley was arranged before you photographed the wedding, is that correct?
Yes, we had the conversations for quite a long period of time.
And you had conversations about going in business together?
Well, it varied. We never really pinned it down very
Okay.
precisely.
But I just want to mean general conversations.
Yes.
And at the time that, when the conversation the district attorney brought up about things that she had done, those were things that you had heard from Linda, is that correct?
Yes, I got two completely different views of the same situation.
Did Elizabeth Broderick, did she appear happy those statements, embarrassed that those statements were made?
She seemed almost amused, as if, that's just one more of his his little ploys.
Okay. And the purpose of her being there was to discuss whether there could be some future business arrangement.
Oh, yes.
I have no further questions.
Rick Ross,
None, Your Honor.
witness be excused.
Subject to response.
Thank you, sir.
Maria Montez?
Your Honor, well, may we approach the bench while she's coming?
Certainly, want it on the record?
Yes, please.
All right.
I have 3 witnesses. I didn't know if we wanted to take a recess, like a half hour or not.
And whatever the court wants to do, that's fine.
Give the jurors a vote. He's got 3 witnesses left. You want to take a recess or keep going, folks?
Keep going.
Keep going. Come on.
Sorry about that.
Ms. Montez, you're still under oath from the last time you testified, okay?
Yeah.
All right, and the record should reflect that Ms. Montez is being assisted by the same court-certified interpreter that was used last time. Go ahead, Mr. Oath.
Montez, do you remember in the spring of 1989, in spring of 1989, were you working at Mrs. Broderick's home?
Sí. Yes.
And do you remember a time that she was working at a daycare center or nursery center?
Sí. Yes.
And would you go over to her house and when she was at work, would you go over to work at her house?
Sí. Yes.
And sometime when you were over there, do you remember a day that a woman came into the house while you were working there?
Sí. Yes.
And do you remember seeing a picture of Linda Coquina, Mr. Broderick's new wife?
Sí, yo la miré en un papel, en una foto, pero cuando ella entró yo no la pude reconocer porque en la foto tenía una sonrisa muy grande y después cuando ella entró no tenía la misma sonrisa.
Yes, excuse me, I'm gonna check
Oh, sustained. Can you answer that question, yes or no?
¿Cómo es la pregunta que?
Did you see a
What was the
picture?
question?
Did you see a picture of Linda Coltina Broderick? Yes or no?
Sí. Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
And did you recognize the person who came over to Mrs. Broderick's house that day?
En el primer momento no.
Not at first.
Okay. Did you at some time realize that it was that one, Linda Coquina?
Hasta cuando la señora llegó y me mostró otra foto.
Not until Mrs. Broderick arrived and showed me another photograph.
Okay. And when she showed you the photograph, it was the person who had been over the house. Was that person?
Sí.
Yes.
Did the person have permission to come in the home?
No.
No.
Okay. Were you home when she came in?
No.
No.
Cuando yo entré, ella ya estaba dentro y andaba en la recámara de la señora.
When I went in, she was already inside and she was in Mrs. Broderick's bedroom.
Okay. And did she tell you who she was?
Ella me dijo, cuando yo oí ruido, yo pregunté, ¿aló? ¿Hay alguien en la casa? Entonces ella me contestó, soy yo, soy una amiga de Betty que vine a ver la casa.
She told me, when I heard noises, I said, hello, is anybody in the house? And then she said, it's me, I'm a friend of Betty's, I came to see the house.
Okay. Did she take anything with her?
¿Ella se llevó algo consigo?
Sí,
Yes.
Okay. And what did she take with her?
unos papeles, entró al cuarto donde la señora tenía las cajas de los papeles que ella tenía y de ahí sacó de una caja, pero yo no supe qué se llevó. Some papers, she went into the room where Mrs. Broderick had some boxes with documents, and from there she took something out, but I don't know what it was that she took.
Yeah, but she left with those papers.
¿Ya se fue con esos papeles?
Sí,
Yes.
Did she ever come back?
¿Alguna vez regresó?
sí, después más tarde regresó.
Yes, later on afterwards she came back.
How long after she was
¿Qué
gone
tanto
was it? she came
después
back?
de que ella se había ido regresó?
Pues después de mediodía no recuerdo la hora cuando.
After midday, I don't remember
Pero-
what time,
Fueron unos minutos antes de que la señora llegara a casa.
but it
Que Betty
was
llegara.
some minutes before Mrs. Broderick, before Betty arrived home.
Can you give me an estimate? And I understand this is only your best guess of how long from the time she left the first time and came back the second time, how long that was?
Más o menos unas entre 4 y 5 horas.
More or less between 4 and 5 hours.
Now, sometime in June of 1987, did you learn that, did you become aware that Miss Broderick had gone to court one day and got placed in custody?
Sí, porque ella me dijo,
Yes,
yo vivía
because she
en la
told me.
casa y ella me dijo, sabes María que yo voy a corte hoy este día y posible me detengan, no voy a venir a dormir para que no tú
Yes,
cierres la puerta.
because she told me, she said, you know what, Maria, I'm going to court today and they might detain me, so I might not be home, I might not come home to sleep so that you can know and lock the door.
Now, at that point in time, was Kim allowed to be in the house when Betty wasn't there?
Bueno, yo nunca supe que ella le negara la entrada, pero ese día ella llegó a las 12 de la noche a tocarme.
Well, I never knew that she didn't allow her in, but that day she arrived at 12 midnight to knock.
And what did she tell you when she arrived?
¿Y qué es lo que le dijo cuando llegó?
Que su mamá le había dado permiso de quedarse a dormir y que si por favor le abría la puerta.
That her mom had given her permission to stay and sleep over, that if I would please open the door.
And did you let her in?
¿Usted la dejó entrar?
Sí,
Yes.
And what happened after you let her in?
¿Y qué pasó después de que usted la dejó entrar?
cuando yo le abría la puerta ella pasó, pero se fue a la otra puerta del otro lado de la casa, abrió la puerta y entraron muchos amigos, muchachas y muchachos de ella. Tenían un party, estaban tomando, pues un party ahí en la casa.
As I opened the door, she walked past me and she went to the other door and she opened the door and a lot of her friends came in and they were there and they were drinking and smoking and they were having a party. A lot of them were there.
Okay. And did you finally have to do something about that?
Y usted finalmente tuvo que hacer algo al respecto.
Sí, yo fui, hablé con Kim, me puse una bata y fui, le hablé, le dije, Kim, tú sabes que tu mamá no está y yo no tengo permiso para dejarte hacer un party así.
Yeah.
¿Puedes hacer el favor de salirte?
Yes, I went over and I spoke to Kim. I put on a robe and a bathrobe and I went and I told her, Kim, you know that I don't have any permission to let you be here when your mother is not here and have a party. And could you please do me the favor of not having the party?
Que limpiara y se fuera, si no yo le iba a llamar a su papá.
And for her to clean up and leave or else I would call her father.
Did they eventually leave?
Sí, finalmente limpiaron, se fueron, pero cuando se fueron me gritaban cosas los
Yes.
amigos porque los había echado yo de la casa.
Yes, they finally cleaned up and they left, but as they were leaving, they were yelling things at me because I had thrown them out of the house.
I have no further questions.
Close it down.
Ms. Montez, how many friends are you referring to?
No, más de 6, 10,
More
no
than-
recuerdo cuántos, pero
More than 6, 10, I don't
no recuerdo cuántos.
remember how many. I don't remember how many of them there were.
Somewhere between 6 and 10?
Entre 6 y 10
amigos,
and 10
mujeres y hombres.
women and men.
And you don't know what Kim had been doing earlier in the evening or whether she'd been upset earlier in the evening, correct?
¿Sabe qué era lo que Kim estaba haciendo anteriormente esa noche? Si ella estaba alterada o no.
Yo no la había mirado ese día,
No,
hasta cuando llegó y me tocó la puerta.
I hadn't seen her that day until she arrived and knocked on the door.
And you don't know whether those friends who were with her to try and cheer her up because she was upset.
Estaban ahí para tratar de aliviarla porque ella estaba alterada.
Yo no supe nada porque yo con ella no, muy poco hablaba, solamente habló cuando llegaba y bye, porque con ella nunca platicaba, entonces solamente entró y después cuando yo hablé que se fuera, fue todo.
I never knew because I wouldn't speak to her very much, just hello when she would arrive and goodbye. So I didn't know, I didn't talk to her very much.
And when you asked her to have the party leave, she did follow your direction and had the party leave, correct?
Sí, sí.
Yes, yes, afterwards.
And it wasn't Kim who was yelling anything at you, was it?
No, los amigos me gritaban.
No,
yo estaba ya acostada.
I was already in bed.
Yo oí los gritos que de afuera me gritaban, oh María.
But I heard them
No
yelling
supe
at
quién,
me
yo no supe quién.
from the outside, oh Maria, this and that, but I didn't know who. I didn't find out.
You indicated when you came home that one day and you found a young woman in your house. Do you know how it was she got in the house? Had the house been unlocked?
Es que estaba la otra puerta del lado de la alberca, siempre estaba abierta. Y por ahí ella había entrado porque no supe yo por dónde entró. Yo no supe por dónde entró porque yo puse según traía yo la llave, abrí, me entré, pero oí yo ruidos, fue cuando yo le dije.
Through the other door, the door that was close to the swimming pool, that's the one, I guess that's when she came in. I don't know how she came in because I got there, I opened up with the key, I came in, I heard noises, I don't know how she got in.
I have no further questions.
Redirect? Witness be excused. Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Oh, Patty Monahan.
Final man, you're still under oath from last time. Afternoon.
And the, did you talked about the fact that Mrs. Broderick talked to you about her divorce. Did the conversation of your divorce ever come up during that time?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And did you talk to her about a memo from that your husband was a good friend of her husband, is that
Yes.
correct? They were basically best friends
Yes.
for a long time? Did you talk to her about a memo that your husband had that had to do with taking assets when you left for divorce?
Taking assets?
Taking things, when you were going to be divorced from somebody, taking things. What you could take and what you couldn't.
No, I don't believe that's what it was.
Well, did you talk to her, was there a memo that your husband, or a piece of paper that he had, or a booklet that had to do with things to do when you're getting a divorce?
You're not gonna object to their element.
Well,
I think what you're trying to say is that you ever show anything of that nature to, or discuss anything of that nature with your client, is that correct?
Yes.
Why don't you ask it that way?
Okay.
But-
Your Honor, if this witness denies it, I plan to impeach her.
Well, if you don't have to explain that to me, ask her and see what happens.
Did you talk to Elizabeth Broderick about a memo that involved taking, before you got divorced, how you can take assets and transfer them anywhere?
No,
Did you talk to her about the fact that when you get that there was a memo in existence about what to do with your family home and what to do with your children?
no,
Did you talk to her about any memo or piece of paper that you found that upset you that your husband had?
yes,
And did you tell her what you did with that memo?
yes, I did.
And what did you tell her that you did with the memo?
I gave it to my attorney,
Okay, and your attorney was who?
Tom Ashwood.
Okay. And at some point in time, did you find that that memo was gone, no longer in your file? Did you look for
Yes.
that memo
Yes,
and it was missing from the file?
as far as I know.
Did you tell her that that memo would upset you?
Yes,
Did she ask you to try to get a copy of it?
no,
I have no further questions.
Cross-examine?
Mrs. Monahan, what is this alleged memo that counsel's talking about?
the only memo I can recall that upset me to any degree was a list of personal possessions to take when a man is leaving his home and not intending to come back. I can't even remember what was on the list, but they were personal possessions, things that belonged to him prior to our marriage, and also certain legal papers.
Now, this was something that happened when you were going through a divorce with your husband, correct?
Yes,
You had been married to your husband for how long?
23 years.
And what was it that upset you about this list?
The reason I was upset was mainly because I realized that he wasn't coming back. This wasn't a trial separation. This was what a man would do if he wasn't planning on coming back.
So you realized that he was serious about separating and divorcing.
Divorce, yes.
Now, there wasn't anything about this list or memo that suggested ways to cheat your husband or cheat your wife if you're leaving in a divorce, was there?
Absolutely not.
And there was nothing that made you upset about this list, thinking that this is something that my husband's going to cheat me with, right?
No,
It was simply the fact that you recognized that your husband was serious about going through with a divorce.
exactly.
And you never suggested to Elizabeth Broderick that there was some list or memo on how to cheat your wife in a divorce, did you?
Absolutely not.
Did you ever feel that your husband, David Monahan, cheated you in your divorce?
Absolutely not.
So if she is suggesting that there was some list about how to cheat your wife and it came from you, that's a fabrication on her part, right?
Yes, it is.
I have nothing further.
Redirect?
Ma'am, even though this was just a list, as you say, that just meant to you that he was going to leave you forever, you thought it was important enough to give to your lawyer.
I told my lawyer about it and he said he'd like to see it.
And you talked with the lawyer at that time, didn't you, about rumors about people from
Objection, Your
Greg Carey?
Honor. Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Your Honor, it goes to impeachment if she
Well,
was
it's
talking.
privileged material is what she told her attorney, having to do with the divorce. I haven't heard any waiver in any conversations you had with her attorney.
Did you talk to other people at that time about rumors going?
Objection, irrelevant. What other people she might have talked to about?
Sustained.
Did you ever talk about the subject that people at Great Carey were?
Objection, irrelevant. Whether she ever talked about,
If I can,
Let her finish the question. If you limit it to talking to your client, it's going to be relevant. If not, we'll see. Go ahead.
did you talk to anybody about the fact that there was some kind of conspiracy at Great Carey, the wives believed, among the attorneys there to do things with their money when they divorced their wives?
Would you say that again, please?
Did you talk to anybody that there was a feeling among wives at Great Carey that funny things were happening when lawyers there were leaving their wives?
No,
Was your house for sale at the time of your divorce?
objection,
Well,
irrelevant.
Sustained.
Did you say anything to Elizabeth Broderick about your house being for sale at the time of the divorce?
Objection, irrelevant.
Sustained without an offer of proof, Mr. Lee. Whether or not her house was for sale, I don't see the connection.
Well, I'll give the court an offer of proof.
Fine, why not?
In regards to the memo, did you talk to Elizabeth Broderick about your children, where they were living when the split up happened?
I don't understand the question.
Did you talk to Elizabeth Broderick about being upset about your children being sent away during the time of your split up?
Your Honor, I object to the relevance of what this witness might have been upset about during her own divorce.
Sustained.
Did you talk about that in regards to the memo at all?
I don't understand your question.
I don't either, Mr. Lee. I think the memo she said had to do with personal belongings you take with you. That's what I recall the answer.
Yes, Your Honor. May we approach the bench again, Your Honor, make another offer of proof?
All right, sure.
When you talked about the memo, did that have anything to do when you were talking about the memo with children?
With my children?
Yes.
No,
The time that you were talking to Elizabeth Broderick about what your characterization of the memo is, did the subject of children come up?
Your Honor, objection, ask and answer.
Sustained.
I'm just asking her in the same conversation whether it came up.
It's also sustained as irrelevant, whether the conversation with children came up.
I have no further questions.
Cross it down.
No, Your Honor.
Witness be excused. Thank you very much, Ms. Monahan. Afternoon, Mr. Forbes. You're still under oath from last time, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Forbes, have you in the past gotten together with a group of, this is between the last trial and this trial, a group of friends of Dan Broderick and family to discuss the upcoming trial?
No, I've not.
Do you know of any existence of any group of people that have discussed the trial and strategies?
Not on a formal basis. I know it's a subject of discussion among lots of people in the community.
Have you discussed with other people the fact that the way to get on the stand is to make sure that you ramble on about material that you know is not supposed to get to a jury or is illegal material, so the defense has to object?
No.
Have you ever seen any information about that, where there's a group that's asked to do that?
Has to do what?
To suggest that there should be some kind of
Objection, Your Honor, irrelevant.
Well, sustained at this point. I don't see where you're going.
I'm showing motive or bias, Your Honor, if there is such.
Of this
witness?
This witness.
We said he's denied any knowledge of any such group or taking part in any such group.
You've never heard or seen anything that talked about the best ways to get things in front of a less than middle class jurors?
No, the answer is no.
Sustained. The answer is stricken, sustained.
And there's been no discussions among anybody about how to get evidence before a jury.
There have been no discussions that I'm aware of. I never took part in any such discussions.
Yeah, can we approach sidebar?
Certainly.
Sir, if you could look at what has been marked as defendant's exhibit W.
For the record, Exhibit W is a 5-page letter dated
June 21st, 1991. The number of,
That's good enough. Go ahead.
can you look at that letter and see if that's something that you've seen before, been copied before?
Can I read it?
Yes, go ahead, look at it.
And the question is, have I seen this before?
Yes,
I believe I have.
and did you discuss the contents of the letter before?
No, I have not.
Okay. I don't have any further questions at this time.
Question?
Mr. Forbes, do you feel that your testimony in this trial in some way rambled on and on in order to get irrelevant material in front of this jury?
No.
I take it you weren't particularly thrilled to be the person who had to discover two friends dead in the bedroom, were you?
No, I wasn't.
Well,
I have an objection, it's argumentative.
That's overruled. Answer stands.
did you volunteer to find them and so that you could come in here and testify?
Your Honor, an objection, that has nothing to do, that's irrelevant to the question.
Sustained. Thank you, Mr. Early.
No, Your Honor.
Witness be excused. Swell. No objection.
Subject to recall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Forbes.
Honor, I wonder if we could just wait for a minute at this time.
All right. Other witness you had scheduled for this afternoon had plane connection problems, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
So you're out of witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our afternoon recess at this time. Please remember the admonition. I hope you beat the trick-or-treaters to your house. Have a nice evening.
Sir, could you please state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
It's Jason Prantil, Prantil.
Thank you.
Sir, what is your occupation?
I manage a restaurant in La Jolla.
And which restaurant is that?
It's Chuck's Steakhouse.
In 1989, were you working at Chuck's Steakhouse?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and did you know someone named Lee Broderick?
Yes, I did.
And what was your relationship with Lee Broderick at that time?
We were living together. She was my girlfriend.
And are you still boyfriend, girlfriend?
No.
Okay. Did you come to know Elizabeth Broderick, Betty Broderick, during the time that you were dating Lee?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Were you friends with Elizabeth Broderick? Didn't like her, friendly? How would you describe
It was a friendly relationship. I got along with her.
Okay. Did you also have a opportunity? Did you have opportunities to be around her house?
Yes, I did.
And did you have an opportunity to be around Lee's father's house?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember on November 5th, 1989, Elizabeth Broderick coming over to the house where you were?
Yes, I did.
When she came over, what was her demeanor? How was she acting?
Well, she was mumbling about not making much sense. She was very incoherent that morning.
Was she happy, sad, crying?
She was just a big collage of emotions that morning, really.
Did you talk about something that happened at Dan Broderick's house that morning?
She mentioned something about going over there and resolving the situation she had between herself and Daniel.
Did she tell you whether she had shot somebody when she was over there?
She said she confronted him, and she said she couldn't take it anymore, and she just shot.
Did she tell you how many times she shot?
She said once or twice. She didn't know after that.
Did she indicate whether she knew whether she had shot somebody?
No.
At some point in time, did you go with Elizabeth Broderick when she went to turn herself in?
Yes, I did.
And did she write anything out at that time?
When we were going to the police station to turn her in, she wrote down a will and testament, and she also had some instructions for Lee and I to take care of.
That was something she wrote in the car down there?
Yes.
And during the, did she mention anything, had she mentioned anything about suicide that day?
She briefly mentioned something to that extent.
Did she mention anything about it? When was that? Did it have anything to do with when she was over at Dan Broderick's house? Do you remember? Or,
It was vaguely related to that.
did she say anything else about the shooting or the gun?
She said that she shot, and next thing she remembers, it was clicking, something to that.
I take it you didn't take any notes that day?
No, I didn't take any notes.
After, when you were dating Lee, did you get to know her sister Kim?
Yes, I got to know Kim.
Would you be present when she would talk to her mother about things that were happening over at her father's house?
Yes, I was present.
Okay. What would her demeanor be? Would she be talking happy tones, complaining? How would she be?
Well, usually she'd be complaining about something to do with Linda and Dan, how silly they're, whatever they would do. Or she'd be in hysterics about something that she didn't agree with.
Did you ever hear Elizabeth Broderick's response to those about Kim's complaints?
She would say that, if you're so sick of living over there, why don't you just come live with me?
Did you see her other children, the boys around her too?
On occasion, I did see them together.
Okay. And how did they seem to be around their mother?
Yeah, they were pretty happy. They liked to be in over at their mom's house.
Did you hear Elizabeth Broderick use profanities?
I would hear her use profanities.
Did it usually relate to a particular subject, or was it all the time?
Well, definitely related to one subject.
And what was that?
Anything to do with the deceased.
Did she, the other times when she wasn't on that subject, did she seem to talk appropriately?
Most of the time she talked appropriately.
Did you ever have an opportunity to go over to Daniel Broderick's house when Lee was living there when you went to visit?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you ever talk to Elizabeth Broderick about things that you heard at Dan Broderick's house relationship? Things that you heard Linda saying about Elizabeth Broderick?
I remember going over to Betty's house with Lee, and she would say, Lee would say something about what Linda would say, and I would say, yeah, she call you, oh yeah, she called you the beast again, and she's calling you a bitch, and all this stuff.
And those were things that you were hearing?
Those were things that I heard.
Would you notice when you were over at Daniel Broderick's house, would you notice a difference in the way people felt over there, children?
Sustained.
Was there did the children appear to be happy and carefree when they were over at Dan Broderick's house?
Well, they were to a point happy and carefree when Dan wasn't around, but when he was around, it was like they're intimidated on doing anything rash or, anything normal of kids their age.
I have no further questions.
Cross examine.
Thank you. Your Honor. You indicated, Mr. Prantill, that when Elizabeth Broderick came over to your house or your apartment that morning on November the 5th, that your words were that she mentioned something about going over there to Dan and Linda's house. She told you specifically that she had come from Dan and Linda's house, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And she told you exactly how she'd gotten into their house. She told you that she had gone around to the back door and gone in the back door, correct?
She mentioned something about going around into the back door.
Okay. She told you that that's how she had done it, correct?
Amongst all of her ramblings, she mentioned that.
Okay. And she told you that she had a key and that she used the key to get into the back door?
She mentioned something about that also.
And she told you that she went into their room by going down the hallway and through the TV room and in the back door, correct?
Correct, vaguely. She said that.
Okay. Well, it wasn't real vague in your recollection when you gave a statement to the police officer that day, was it? You described specifically that she had told you doing those things, correct?
Correct, but that was about the third time I went over that. I've said this story about 3 or 4 times before it was actually on tape.
Okay, when you interviewed, I'm talking about when you interviewed with Detective Allen on the day of November the 5th. You did give an interview to him that day, correct?
Yes, I did. And the one that was taped, the one that was recorded, was about the third time I've been over this.
Okay. And you also indicated that when she went into the room that she shot at Dan Broderick. She told you she'd shot at him, correct?
Correct.
And she told you that he said to her, okay, you shot me, you killed me. He responded to her when she shot.
Correct.
She also told you that she pulled out the phone.
No, she didn't.
You didn't hear her say that?
No, I don't recall.
She told you that, specifically that she went in the back door of the bedroom, and that once she saw him, she said she couldn't take it anymore, and that's when she unloaded on him, correct?
Correct.
Now, when she was at the house there, she asked you and Lee to go over to her house on Calle de Cielo and get some things, right?
Correct.
And you went with Lee to get those things.
Correct.
And where was it that she wrote this list of things for you to do?
She wrote that at our apartment.
While you were all sitting there in the apartment, she wrote it?
Yes.
So it wasn't later on when you were in the car at the point of turning her into the police, right?
She wrote down the will in the car. And I believe she wrote down some of her instructions that in the apartment, and then she wrote down the rest of them in the car.
Your Honor, may I have marked as People's Exhibit Mr. Moore? People's Exhibit 64, what appears to be a photograph of,
Should be 65.
appears to be a photograph of, a very nice photograph of Mr. Jason Moore.
So Mark,
If you could take a look at this, Mr. Prantill, do you recognize that photograph?
It's kind of resembling.
Were you a model at some point?
Yes.
Okay. And is that what Mrs. Broderick wrote, the list of things down for you all to do or for information to give to Lee that morning?
Yes.
Okay, now there's some writing on there. You recognize that writing as Mrs. Broderick's handwriting, is that correct?
Correct.
There's some writing on there that's in pencil and there's some writing on there that's in pen. Can you explain why there's two different writings on there?
I can't really recall. It might be what she wrote in the car, but
Well, this was something that was sitting around there in your apartment, right? And that's why it was used for her to write on?
yes.
And were you there when she wrote the $10,000 check to Lee?
I can't recall. I don't remember when she wrote it. I don't remember.
Do you remember her writing the $10,000 check for Lee?
No, I can't recall.
And when she sent the two of you to go over to the condominium, not the house on Calle de Cielo, but to the condo, what was it that she wanted you to get from the condo?
She wanted us to get her diary and this book that she's been writing about. It's an autobiography, really.
So she specifically directed you to get those specific things, right?
Correct.
And she told you exactly where to find them in the condominium.
Correct.
And did you find those?
Yes, I did.
You and Lee went into the condo and got them?
Yes.
How was it that you got into the condo?
Well, Lee boosted me up, and we didn't have the key, so I had to break in through the window on the second story.
And did you just get the diaries and the book, or did you get other things for her?
We just got the diaries and the book and got out of there.
Just specifically the diaries themselves, you picked them up, and specifically the book, you got that as well?
Correct.
You told Detective Allen that day that Elizabeth Broderick told you that she had shot Mr. Broderick twice, correct?
She said she shot him once or twice. Correct.
Do you recall specifically saying that she said she shot him twice?
I specifically recall that she said she shot him once or twice.
If I could just show you an investigative report dated November 5th, 1989. And referring to page 1, the last paragraph here, if you would just read that sentence to yourself. Does that refresh your recollection about what she said or how many times she said she shot Mr. Broderick?
This is over 2 years old. It's vaguely to the point of what I said, but I remember her saying once or twice.
Okay.
So I guess I might have said twice.
You might have said that to to Detective Allen on that day, November 5th.
Yes.
Your Honor, I object to showing that summary. There is a tape. And I think it's probably.
sustain.
I'm just showing him the report to refresh his recollection.
That's all right, you've got that in. Want something else?
Okay. You indicated that you had heard Elizabeth Broderick use what might be referred to as inappropriate language in front of the boys, correct?
Rarely.
And that would be when she would be angry at their father for one reason or another.
That was the basis of her using profanities in front of the boys.
And did she ever explain to you why she used profanities in front of the boys if she was angry at their father?
She was just furious at him.
Okay. But she wasn't talking to their father, right? She was talking to the boys when she used that language.
Only if he was brought up some way. If he was brought up, that's when she would use the profanities.
She also used that type of language to Lee when she got angry at Lee, didn't she?
Correct.
Okay. So when you say she only used inappropriate language in relation to Mr. Broderick, that's not true, is it? If she got angry at Lee, she'd call Lee a bitch. She'd write, quote, fuck you on
Only
the
in front of
mirror.
the boys. She would use profanities when she mentioned the word Dan. In front of Lee and myself, she would use profanities.
I'm talking about when she would simply get angry at Lee and it didn't have anything to do with her father.
She would use profanities at her in my presence, but not when the boys were around.
Okay, but she would use profanities when she was angry, even though the anger wasn't directed at Dan or Linda Broderick, correct?
Correct.
And how many times would you say you were actually over at Mr. Broderick's house when Mr. Broderick was there with the boys?
On a few occasions, not too
Only
many
on a
occasions.
few occasions, okay. And you never saw Mr. Broderick playing basketball with the boys when he got home from work?
No,
You never saw him interacting with the boys, helping them with their homework in the evening?
no,
You never saw him taking them on camping trips and taking them to baseball games, things like that?
no. I saw him take him to the movies. I think once, yeah.
Now, you said that the defendant vaguely related something about suicide that morning?
Yes.
What was it that she vaguely related?
She just mentioned something about suicide that morning when she was mumbling on about all the things that were going on.
Okay, but she didn't say anything specific about when it was that she felt that way or what it related to? Did you put it in any context?
I think it was related to going over there, but I'm not certain.
You didn't say anything about her making any statements like that when you talked to Detective Allen, did you?
No.
And you didn't say anything to Detective Allen about her saying anything about the gun clicking more times, did you?
I might have the first version or the second version.
When you were sat down and had a complete, full interview with Detective Allen, you didn't say anything about that, did you?
I might have the first or second version when we recorded. What you have there is what I said.
I have no further questions.
Correct. The time that you were talking to Detective Allen, how long were you down there before you were taped?
Well, we were put in the back of a car, and then we were in the car for about 45 minutes, and then we were sent to our apartment, and then we were there for another hour or so, and then we went downtown, and I don't even know how long we were there. It might have been 2 hours.
Okay. And I take it during that period of time, Detective Allen was going through this with you a number of times?
Yes.
And the tape where you actually had a conversation was about a 15, 20-minute tape?
About that long, yes.
And did, during the time that you were there, what was your physical state while you were waiting to talk to Detective Allen?
Well, I worked the night before, and I was woken up at around 7 o'clock, and we didn't have anything to eat. And it was by the time we made the tape, it was probably about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I really wasn't completely all together.
did you even know what had happened? I mean, when did you learn that Mr. Broderick actually was shot?
We learned right when the patrolman picked us up, and we met with the other patrolman and the officer on Cass and Garnett at some bank. And that's when we found out, or that's when I found out.
I have no further questions.
Recross?
You're not saying that anything you said to Detective Allen wasn't true at the time, are you?
No.
Nothing further.
Witness be excused. As well.
No objection.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prantill.
Yes, Frank Bisceglia, Your Honor. Bisceglia. It's the homicide.
Here's also the testimony about to give and the matter not being given. What shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Sir, could you have a seat in the witness stand?
Morning, sir. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Judge.
And sir, could you state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
First name is Frank J. Bisceglia, B like in boy, Isceglia.
Thank you.
Mr. Bisceglia, if you have trouble hearing me, let me know. If you're not
certainly
sure. Okay. Do you know Elizabeth Broderick here at the end of consultation?
Beg pardon, sir?
Do you know this lady here who I have my hand on at the end of consultation? Can you hear me?
Yes,
And okay. Are you related to her?
I'm her father.
Okay. On November 5th, 1989, did you receive a phone call from her?
Yes, sir. I received a call about 11 o'clock our time, which would be approximately 8 o'clock your time here.
Okay. You were living in New York?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you talked to her, what was she like on the phone?
She was sobbing. She was very hysterical. And she kept saying, Dan is driving me up the wall. He's driving me crazy. I feel like committing suicide. And I said, Betty Ann, calm down, calm down. Everything will be all right. And before I knew it, she hung up.
Okay. Now, what was she like before she hung up? And was she
She was still sobbing, very upset.
And that was the end of the conversation?
That's right. She hung up.
I have no further questions.
Cross down.
Mr. Bisceglia, did your daughter tell you where she was calling from?
No, she didn't.
She didn't tell you that she was at Lee's house?
No,
And did she tell you that she had come from Dan and Linda's house and shot them?
never mentioned a word about that.
So she never said anything about the fact that she had just shot two people?
Not at all.
The only thing she was saying to you was that Dan was driving her crazy.
That's right. Very upset and driving her crazy.
Did you get, well, how long was this conversation before she hung up?
I would say no more than a minute and a half.
When was it that you found out that Dan and Linda Broderick had been killed?
About an hour and a half later, Gail Forbes called me up telling me that Dan and Linda were murdered and Betty Ann is a prime suspect.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor.
Witness be excused.
Yes,
No objection.
Thank you very much, sir.